Welcome to the MAFIA BPA podcast, sponsored by FanDuel. My name's Jim.
My name's Owen.
My name's Will.
And we are your best podcasters available today. I'm really excited. It's great to see Will on a podcast. I think the last time I saw Will was actually a couple weeks before the NFL draft. So we are going to be doing a live stream of the Bills-Steelers game. Owen and I are huge Bills fans. Will has the longest running Steeler podcast. So Will, do you want to take a moment, introduce yourself to the Overreaction Buffalo crowd?
Sure. I do in fact have host the Steelers, the longest running Pittsburgh Steelers podcast in the universe, 2008. Jimmy, you weren't even born yet in 2008, but we've been running since then. And it's available on YouTube and places where you listen to podcasts, of course. And SteelerFury.com is the website that I have been a part of for quite a long time. And then if you know me on Twitter, I'm Accidental Zen, annoying people and disagreeing on just about everything.
Yep.
So it feels nice to not be the target of the target of the young jokes in this pod.
Give it time, Owen.
I will.
Yeah. Well, we have a treat because we're going to be trying to do our best to talk about the players that are on the field for most of the podcast. And in order for us to do that, we have to have a pretty strong knowledge of the draft. Will and I met in the draft space many years ago. I think at this point it might be 7 or 8 years, Will. And then Owen and I have been podcasting on the draft. We're going on our third draft cycle together. So we're going to start, though, with, we're on Overreaction Buffalo. This is John Fina and Jerry Ostroski's channel. And Will, you have a little bit of knowledge of John Fina because you scouted him coming out of college, right?
Well, at those days, I didn't really get seriously into scouting until 2004, but I was, in fact, a football fan. I knew a lot of the guys in the sort of the first and second round of drafts back in that day. The one thing I could tell you is 92 is right about the turning point where offensive linemen, they started looking for two things that become ubiquitous now. One is they looked for 300-pound guys for the first time because it was not a thing to have even guards that were 300 pounds, let alone all five offensive linemen and tackles that used to have to be speedy and so on and so forth. But the other thing with some of the rules changes starting in the mid 80s, offensive linemen were allowed to use their hands more and extend their arms more. So they started looking for guys with long arms who were athletic, super athletes for their size. And that describes John Fina. John Fina's deal was that he was a defensive lineman, and he was, as you would think for a defensive lineman converted to offensive lineman, really good athlete, long arms, over 34-inch arms, which in that era, once again, is a kind of a big deal. And probably the most notable thing was, I don't know if you guys know the story with the Belichick workout. I'm sure that's come up before. But Belichick was an assistant at that point, I guess, with the Giants under Parcells. But he had just taken his job with the Browns. And he demanded of John Fina's agent that like a couple days before the draft, that he come to Cleveland and do a personal workout. And Belichick apparently attempted to try to wear him out and see how long he would go in the workout before he dropped over. He worked him out at every offensive line position, each one a complete workout, then at every defensive line position. And finally, at the end of it, Belichick was tired and he was like, shit, man, you're a first round pick. See you later. But the problem is that they only, they had a pick number 5, which they used on a fullback, which I'm sure they probably regretted later in time, and Fina did not make it back around to Cleveland because the Bills picked him at the end of round 1. So that's what I remember. Very athletic, long arms. Now he would have gotten picked a lot higher because being an athlete with measurables like that would get you picked early in round 1 rather than late.
So is Buffalo going no huddle here?
They do appear to be doing that. By the way, since you opened up the door for the game, I can tell you something that the Steelers, we'll call it their first team defense. It's really more like, mostly twos with a couple of ones sprinkled in. They haven't, whatever they put on the field in the first drive of the game hasn't really stopped anybody yet in the preseason. So, take the Buffalo's performance with a grain of salt. But yes, they are running, it looks like some kind of version of hurry up.
This is all Buffalo number 2s. I saw Macklin. He was number 84 with a catch a couple plays ago.
We've gotten a catch. Number one is McCole Hardman. Keon's in 0 now. So Hardman got the quick wide receiver screen. Sherfield got the 3rd down conversion, and then that was just a bomb from. Is Shane Buechele going to play the whole game for the Bills? Because I think Kyle Allen is pretty entrenched as the backup at this point.
Yeah, I think this is just a showcase game for Buechele to see if he's, worth putting on the practice squad or getting picked up by another team. It's usually this is game 3 for most teams. I think is that way. The Steelers have a little different situation, as we'll get to later. With their quarterbacks, they have 4 mediocre quarterbacks right now. So their potential solution is to try to keep all 4. But yeah, that's not a particularly good throw.
So that was Skylar Bell. So that pass.
Skylar Bell is other,
Skylar Bell. Yeah, that was his first target as a Bill. He was wide open in the QB.
I would say if he were 8 feet tall, that would have been an excellent throw.
Oh, we mentioned John Fina right at the start of this. Bruno Fina is in at right guard right now, number 75 for the Buffalo Bills. So I've been keeping eyes on him since you started going down the story with John. Unfortunately, I was never able to watch John play. I was a little before my time.
Sure,
but definitely
he's a good player.
Actually, I lied. Bruno is in at center, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's at center. So for those of you who are Pittsburgh fans who are tuned in because I brought you here. That's John Fina's son. So that's part of the reason that the person who hosts this channel, his kid's playing right now for the Bills in preseason. So it's got to be a thrill.
Yep.
We did our roster productions. We can get to those more a little bit later, but I did one for the Bills and for the Steelers, so we can have a discussion about it. Being familiar with a lot of the Steelers' depth from the draft, I have John as one of the only offensive line I think the Bills are going to be able to get on their practice squad. They have a ton of depth right now. And a lot of the guys, if they get waived or cut,
Bruno.
Bron.
I don't think John Fina's not.
John Fina would be still making the cut probably at his age.
I was probably but Bruno, I have is one of the guys when I did a projection for the Bills practice squad. I think he could definitely land there, and him working out at center and getting the reps here at center right now, I think definitely supports that because he's been all over the line for them this preseason.
Can I point out a couple of Bills players that are in the game right now that I actually am really big fans of?
Go for it.
I've been a big fan of Ben Van Sumeren since he was playing defense in college. I just feel like he's one of those guys that you want to have on your football team. Great special teamer. I think his adaptation to this role of more or less full-time fullback has been really good for his development. And I sure hope they keep him. I guess he's sort of on the bubble for you guys, but I don't know. I feel like that's some of those, people discount what guys bring on special teams or as a role player or a specialty player. But I think sometimes for a really good team like Buffalo you need guys like that. You need a couple of role players.
So Van Zimmer already won so there was a fullback battle to start the season between him and rookie Acker from Wisconsin. I watched a couple fullbacks in preparation for the draft just because the Bills often run a fullback, and the idea was that maybe they were going to grab one. I actually wanted them to get Riley Nowakowski, current Steeler.
Yeah.
And he ended up beating out Acker. So if they do end up, they didn't guarantee they were going to keep a fullback. That was Joe Brady's kind of comments at the beginning of this training camp was if someone wins it, they'll keep it. But if they're going to keep a fullback, he's the one they're keeping. And I'm pretty sure he's pretty solidified in that role.
By the way, that last run stop there was the guy that during the NFL draft, the guy that everybody in America was like, who? When the Steelers drafted Rubio from Notre Dame, he has been easily the best showing rookie that the Steelers have had this year in the camp and preseason. And it's amazing because he literally was a guy that I think most people had never heard of. Imagine go to Notre Dame and nobody knows who you are. That's it's next level. Yep. And anyway, the other Bills player I really like is Armaj Adams. I think he's right guard only, but if you're going to be right guard only, you got to be really good at it. I think he can be a little bit. I know he's another sort of bubble guy.
So is Armaj Reed Adams on the field right now?
Yeah, he's starting at right guard.
So, Owen, you want to tell everybody, we have a 2-year story with Owen on Armaj Reed Adams.
I have a full odyssey with him. So in preparation for the 25 draft, I had watched him, and I had him as a second-round grade. I loved him his first year at A&M after transferring from Kansas. He was a guy that he shows it still with the power and ability to move guys off their spot, but even then, that first year at Texas A&M, I felt like he showed some better movement skills, ability to move out of the pocket, roll out, get some good pulls, have that mobility to pair with that size. So I thought he was somebody that I was like, okay, I'm definitely in on him. And even when they moved him to tackle, I didn't think he could play a tackle, obviously, but I did think that he could show enough athleticism. They trusted him to go out there when they had injuries. However, this past year, it was a total 180 for me. He just showed up way more stiff, way less mobility than I remember seeing in the year previous to this film. And I went from being the highest of people I've talked to on him to one of the lowest. He ended up getting drafted in the 7th round. I feel like that was adequate value for where I had him graded. And he's had one of the strongest camps of the rookie offensive linemen so far for the Bills. So he's a guy that in the last, probably from starting from last preseason game to now, has made a strong push to make this roster. And I actually have him landing on our roster in my final predictions for the overall 53.
Yeah, I put it on I would keep him. I wasn't sure the Bills were going to keep him. Like I feel like he's on that kind of bubble. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes with guys, prospects like that look great one year and not good the next year, sometimes I feel like it's likely injury related. Like it might not be something that's bad enough to keep them from playing, but that doesn't allow them to be 100%. It's just like it's too weird when the guy looks that different from year to year.
What's interesting with the Bills is their depth. They have a ton of depth at interior offensive line specifically. So they have at starting center, obviously, is Connor McGovern. And behind him, it was Austin Corbett, potentially, who was also battling for the starting left guard spot. Ended up losing out that battle to Alec Anderson, who's going to be a first-year starter for them. Really good story with him. UDFA, 5th year with the organization, went from practice squad to jumbo tight end to 6th offensive lineman last year, now starting left guard. Ended up started right tackle against the Steelers last year when they ended up beating them with that second-half rally. So I think he's definitely a player that took a next step up, and now you have Alec Anderson, Austin Corbett, who is a backup center and guard. Lloyd Cushenberry is a backup center, and now Armaj Reed-Adams. You have a ton of guys in that interior kind of grouping that is a ton of depth. So it'll be interesting to see if he can make it being an interior exclusive player when their depth they really need is on the outside of tackles.
So
I see the question, but you can read it. Shall I read it? Because it's a
Yeah.
question for Will.
Well, yeah. So I will read it. So first of all, Dylan is a Ravens fan coming in to ask you about the Steelers, Will. So Dylan,
Not everybody's
Owen,
perfect, Jim.
Yeah. So Owen, you podcasted with Dylan. That's Ravens realist, and Will, I think he did Epic Mock with us.
Oh no, I remember. We go back. We go back a ways.
Okay. Yeah. So the question: do you think Wetjen and Heidenreich make the 53?
I think that neither is a lock. I think Eli's route is pretty simple. Special teams. He's been throughout his career a really good special teams player. Like I think he might have been the captain of special teams, or he was like the personal protector guy on all 4 units at Notre Dame. And he is battling with Travis Homer, who is the classic, I've been in the league forever, special teams guy that doesn't give you much on offense, but like special teams, he's going to be great, right? So he has to offer something equivalent on special teams or something pretty good to beat out Homer, and then beating out a couple of other young running backs in Lou Nichols and Caleb Johnson, who pretty much are only runners. Being Eli's a pass catcher, he's got to be effective in the pass catching game or the pass game blocking guys, and he's got to be effective on special teams. Good news for him, he's looking a little bit. He missed some time with an injury, but he made the opening tackle on special teams. So he's been pretty active on kickoff coverage, and I think we're going to see tonight. If you see him work as a personal protector on the punt team for the Steelers, there's chances are he's got a better chance of making the team than if Travis Homer is out there in week 3 of the preseason. So that's him. Wetjen, for my money, he had a huge play, catch and run when his defender fell down, and he looked. Speaking of being,
who's at quarterback right now for Pittsburgh?
Well, we've been starting to call him Opie because Ron Howard. It's Will Howard at quarterback, I think. Wait, did we see? Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Will Howard. Howard in the first half, and Drew Aller in the second half will be what we're planning on seeing tonight.
Oh,
but
we'll have to be there for at least the third quarter because I know Owen.
Absolutely.
Owen loves Drew Aller. So
yeah, absolutely.
We've taken being that he tends to throw up a couple of prayers per game. We've affectionately started calling him Allah Akbar.
Okay. So Will, is that good defense by Buffalo, or was that a blown blocking assignment by Pittsburgh?
That was a blown blocking assignment in the middle. I think Ryan McCullum is starting the game at center. He's had an absolutely awful preseason. by and large, a good player, and I think he's suffered mostly this preseason by, they're trotting out him to play guard, because if he's going to be the backup center on game day, he needs to be able to play guard also to fill that role. But he has just struggled at both center and guard, and I think he's struggling. Let me just say, I can't see if he's actually he's actually he's at guard right now. But yeah, that felt like it was he's at 62, so he's playing left guard at the moment, and I think that was a stunt where he got sort of, his eyes got drawn to the left side and he left a gap open in the A gap for the linebacker. To answer your question, Wetchen, just to finish up on the thought, he's made a couple plays in the first week of preseason, but he really hasn't done much in the return game. Granted, he hasn't had a lot of blocking or whatever, but he doesn't look like, I think if you're going to make the NFL team as a returner, as a return specialist, you got to be scary, right? Okay, wait, we're going to look here to see if Heidenreich is on the field in punt protect, because that's a big key. And I believe he was a personal protector.
So Michael Hoyt was playing. I just noticed that. Well,
his first in-game reps he's had all preseason.
Yep.
Yeah, he's we think he's going to make the team, do we not?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Okay, yeah.
And this is Ray Davis returning the punt, right?
Yes.
Did that bounce off of Davis to the Steelers? Was that a muff?
Ooh. Yes, it was.
That's not good.
No.
I mean, that's not good for you guys anyway. Yeah, so I personally, if it were me, I think Heidenreich has more upside than the guys he's competing against. The Steelers have two strong running backs, 1A, 1B. There's not going to be a lot of carries for running back number 3 unless somebody gets hurt. And there's probably a lot of special teams opportunities though. So I lean to one of the two running backs who's good at special teams. And Eli's younger and can do more in the pass game, can do more if he has to get some snaps on offense in a game where someone gets injured or whatever. That's what I would do. Steelers back on the field now. Jeremy Bernard, really the first, and he's had a couple of targets and made a couple of short catches. That's probably the biggest thing he's done for his confidence in the preseason. So catching a touchdown there from Will Howard. So yeah, I think there's a chance they both make it. I would say there's an excellent chance one of the two makes it. And there's probably very small chance neither makes it. To answer your question, Ravens realist.
Will, I have some follow-ups on those two, because I watched that first Pittsburgh game, and I know Wetchen, his big thing is the return game. He had that big play from Aller in the first one, and it kind of showed off some of the explosiveness and exciting play you get from him as a guy who has that speed and that burst. So I have him, when I did my predictions for the Steelers roster, I had him making it, and it ended up becoming a question for me whether or not Heidenreich was going to make it over. I felt Homer was pretty safe just because they brought him in specifically for the special teams role. But I ended up having to keep 4 running backs, and it was between him and Caleb Johnson. I felt like as Homer is more of the special teams player, do you think that they are not going to kind of wait it out with Caleb Johnson being only second-year player who had a high investment? It's the same GM that brought him in that's still currently
in place, they haven't changed GM, but the staff is completely different, completely changed. I personally wasn't a big fan of Caleb Johnson as a prospect. I didn't like the pick fit for the Steelers, so I'm a little biased. But I don't see it. I don't see the thing from him. If you're going to be a running back only and not really offer anything on special teams, and you're not a great pass catcher, not a natural catcher of the football who can run routes and really be useful as a receiver, then I think you have to be so good at the rest of the game. He's not proven to be a really dependable blocker in pass protection, and he feels like he had college speed and vision. He was able to find the right gap to break into, and he was able to outrun defenders to get to that spot in college. And over 2 years watching him, it doesn't appear that he has that going for him.
Yeah, that was so. I did a battle of the big boards with Newt Weston, another draft professor, and he was Caleb Johnson second round high. I had him as like a 4th or 5th round back, just because I didn't think he had that kind of extra pop. And like you're saying, a good running back in college, but I didn't think he really had it in the NFL. And at that point, I was like, okay. And then they tried to incorporate a bit more in the kick return. I know there was the big kind of gaff last year where he allowed the kick return touchdown, where he didn't field it. But so I'm just not a big fan of his. But to go back to what one of our comments says with the Bills game, talking about running backs and talking about running backs that can contribute in the special teams, Ray Davis has always been my guy. And that muffed punt right there. So
not going to help
in my Bills prediction for the roster, I had Trent Sherfield making the roster over McCole Hardman. I'm curious who you had, Will, because Ray Davis has kind of expressed interest in winning that punt return job. There's been a kind of a conflict of interest who's going to be the punt returner. He has stated it specifically. He wants to be the punt returner. He wants to get more touches in the offense. He wants to be more involved. And to this point, he hasn't really had a lot of opportunities to return the punts in the preseason, but he's always gotten the chance to be the first team punt returner. And McCole Hardman hasn't showed much outside of that and hasn't really done much as a punt returner in the preseason anyway. So I was hoping that would be the case to get us more of a proven special teams guy and Sherfield more well-rounded there. But Ray muffing that is kind of not the best.
I feel like that's job one, when you're a punt returner or kick returner. So that will not win you a lot of friends and family, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know what they'll end up doing. It seems to be the job seems to be still up for grabs.
Yep.
So on that touchdown, that was just blown tackle by Hairston, right? He's just got to make that tackle. I mean, he had him. Right.
Although this is the thing with Jeremy Bernard. He's pretty slippery in the open field. He had some of the best numbers for yards after the catch in the draft class at wide receivers. So it's not the easiest guy in the world to tackle, I guess is what I would say.
Well, and Owen loved Jeremy Bernard. Owen was talking about Jeremy Bernard all summer last year.
Yeah. Well, as you guys may or may not know, we drafted him. I drafted him twice. I drafted him in the board draft that SteelerFury runs by itself, and then I drafted him in the draft professor event as well. We drafted him for the Steelers. So we obviously thought it was a really good fit for Pittsburgh. I'm still feeling pretty good about that. By the way, Jim, I'm told that the YouTube link from the other day is not working. So I want to so forgive me for a second while I get on here and try to send a link.
Okay. I'll send it to you in the private chat.
Okay.
Interesting as well. So we were just talking about how it's kind of the whole Bills punt return job is wide open, like you were saying. They brought in McCole Hardman specifically for that intention. They brought in Dante Pettis, could be another option. Ray Davis wants that job. They also were allowing Keon Coleman to return some punts. He's out hurt right now in a walking boot. And even at points last year when they were kind of struggling with either McCole Hardman being hurt or muffin punts, they put Khalil Shakir back there. Kind of the idea of sure-handed guy. We're not really worried about the punt return being an explosive part of contributions, but it's more so just get the ball, secure it, and make sure that we can have that possession. So that really hurts Ray Davis. But I think that's why, for me, the projection of adding a guy like McCole Hardman makes a little less sense because you have so many other options to just catch the punts. You don't need a guy who's a more electric returner. However, he was just the kick returner on that last return post Jeremy Bernard touchdown. So he's also able to help out with that kick return. So I'm not the biggest McCole Hardman fan. I hope he doesn't make the team because I just don't think he offers much. He's just a gamble every time he touches the ball. But so far, they're not really giving us an easy option to find him a way for him to get off the roster with who else is an option in these return spots.
So Frank Gore with a big run, but there's a flag. I see Skylar Bell was on the field as well. Will, do you see any notable players for Pittsburgh that were on the field that you just
I only say notable because he's an interesting case. That's Julius Welchoff. He's the guy's in an international program, went to Michigan, just started playing football pretty late. Number 55. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was Cole Holcomb. Excuse me. I was thinking about something previous, but notable players. I think the Steelers linebacker situation is pretty good overall. My issue with it is they start the guys that I would not like. I think they have the depth chart upside down kind of. I actually really like Cole Holcomb as being a starter for the Steelers, along with Landon Roberts, who just came back. So you have Roberts as the downhill thumper guy, and you have Cole Holcomb as a more versatile 3-down linebacker. And I've also really liked Carson Bruner the last couple of years. He's a coverage linebacker primarily, who's, he's gotten a lot of success on special teams. I think he's going to make the team for that. But they play Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson over all three of those guys that I'm not really certain why a new regime would come in and not even consider giving other guys opportunities. That's been one of the storylines this season, is that the new regime, coaching regime and new head coach, they haven't really changed much in terms of the depth chart and who they value over other guys. So that part's been interesting.
The biggest storyline for the Bills in this game, I think, so far from me has been seeing who's been playing. So we mentioned Michael Hoyt earlier, who was on the field for that first full Steelers drive, not the one post punt muff. But I think we saw Michael Hoyt out there. We see Skylar Bell out there consistently right now. These are guys that are pretty safe locks for the roster. Like Hoyt's going to be rotational pass rusher for us. He looked awesome in 2 games last year. But he popped his Achilles in the second game he played. And so right now, this is his first like real in-game action he's getting, even though he hasn't even been on the pup at all. They've kind of been taking him a bit slower. So with him and now Skylar Bell, even Tylen Grable, guys who need to get more reps per se, even though their position on the roster is pretty safe when looking at the overall picture of it. So I'm curious to see what else they do with other players we can see that have like getting significant snaps. I know Dorian Williams was in there on the first sack. He was out there for the punt coverage. Mike Hoyt's out there for the punt coverage. I think this is going to be an opportunity for the Bills to get some of these kind of rotational starters or guys that they're interested in seeing how big their workload can be to get some snaps in.
Yeah, the thing is, what you deal with in this game is sometimes it's a good news for a guy's roster chances when you see him in the third week of the preseason, because they think he's not going to get a lot of reps in camp and in the regular season unless somebody gets hurt. Let's get him in the flow of the game so he gets some reps in before the season starts. Or it could be, this guy's really on the bubble, so we need to see everything we can from him for a whole game and see what he can do. I think you probably know better than I which guys fall into that category for the Bills. Or I know when I'm looking at the team, a guy like Joe Buddy who had that sack at defensive line is not making the team, but he's in there because it's like this is his shot before he gets cut to show something. So it's like some guys in the game right now are going to be guys that don't have so much of an NFL future, and this is the biggest moment of their lives. So like, I'm not going to make fun of a guy like that, but I'm also not going to think, oh, he's making plays in preseason game 3, we should keep him on the roster.
I have a go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so I'm getting hungry, and when I get hungry, I want to think of the Anchor Bar in Buffalo. So if you are watching this game in Buffalo, want to remind you that Anchor Bar is a proud sponsor of Overreaction Buffalo. It's the home of the original Buffalo chicken wing.
That's
you can
right.
Watch the Bills and your favorite sports teams there. The Buffalo wings are fresh, never frozen, jumbo, high-quality wings. They have over 24 varieties of sauces. And then they have other menu choices, which include pizza, beef on weck, burgers, chicken tenders, boneless wings. And there are 16 Anchor Bar locations, which include Tucson, Arizona, Frisco, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Back to our regularly scheduled program.
Jim, Anchor Bar is like the equivalent of Permanis when you're in Pittsburgh. Permanis has locations out of state and everything, but it's like a real Pittsburgh thing. But I've actually been to Anchor Bar and had the wings long ago, long before they were a national headline. But
Will, I have a question for you, a Buffalo food question, for anybody who's watching us that doesn't know my background, I worked as a scout for the University of Buffalo. When we had our recruiting visits, we had a bunch of guys in from Virginia, outside of the states, and we'd have a Taste of Buffalo lunch every time we'd have a full official visit over the weekends. And the bar, they would be full. We'd have a bunch of different foods from a bunch of different local places. And one of the things that I liked that we got there, we didn't get them from the Anchor Bar when we did that buffet, but something that I learned, it's one of the food items I actually really enjoy from Anchor Bar, and I learned through that was a Buffalo local staple, is the pizza log. I didn't know that was a thing local to us, but the Anchor Bar makes some awesome ones. I was curious from Pittsburgh. I don't know how much of that is bled over to you guys, because there was people from Ohio who had no idea what I was talking about.
Nope. I know it because I'm interested in these things, and when I travel, I always try to dig into like the local food stuff, but. No, other than just here, I have a lot of friends who are from Buffalo who talk about this stuff, but that absolutely did not make it south of Erie.
Yeah, I absolutely. That's one of my favorite items there. I was surprised because it's basically it's up here. It's the equivalent of like a mozzarella stick, which is also I feel like a universal bar food snack. That's like it's in the same bucket where growing up here.
No.
It was just like, oh, that's universal food. Everyone knows what that is. And I heard people come in from Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, no idea what they were. And I was like, wow, it's actually surprising to me. So I was curious to see if that had made it down south to you guys. Though there's a lot of crossover with Pittsburgh and Buffalo food. So I was wondering if that was one of the things that made it over.
But by the way, this virtual measurement thing, can I just say what a crock it is? Because the first down was directly on the painted line. And so they do this virtual measurement. Like, you can't tell it's past the line. Like, look at the ball. The entire ball is over the painted line. I don't understand why you have to go through this charade.
So, Will, Buffalo's got a couple of draft picks on the field right now. Where were you on Caleb Elarms Orr and TJ Parker?
I was not as high on Orr as on Elam's Orr as some people. Some people were just like that. A couple of weeks before the draft, he really blew up as a prospect in terms of notoriety. I thought he's a good player. It was the coverage, like I tend to value coverage for linebackers more than most, because I think in the NFL, if you can't cover anybody, you're really limited as a linebacker. And I felt like his coverage was something he really needed to work on. But I think he's shown himself pretty well from what I can tell, seeing him from afar. But that's always, to me, that's going to be the question. He's a coverage linebacker, but if you don't have that skill to go backwards and play in space and playing zone is hard for good athletes because they never are asked to do it when they're in high school or college, right? So developing that awareness in zone that you have to know like what's behind you and what's happening peripherally, and just having a feel for that is something that I think he'll have to develop to get better.
Man, how about TJ Parker?
Parker, I liked. I mean, I think it's if I recall, he didn't test, so it's harder for me. It's just funny. They're still out there running tight end screens in goal line, even though Arthur Smith isn't their coach anymore. This thing is like that's an Arthur Smith staple from last year. Could have been Jonnu Smith wearing 81. I think he's a. Like I would describe him as being like a really polished, like had more skill toolbox than athleticism. I think which is probably a good sign if somebody's not a terrible athlete. If you're at least work at your craft and he's like a professional pass rusher. I feel like that's his calling card, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm not sure the upside ceiling is there to be like, a 20 sack a year guy or whatever, but not every player has to be that. I think let me ask you this. How do you feel he is against the run, like as an overall player, or is he still more of a stunt rusher type?
Definitely coming out, I felt like his profile of more being a power rusher, being able to run through guys' chests, like you were saying, not the super bendy, explosive athlete pass rusher type. That was what you kind of played into more with that, is him being able to play through guys' chests. I'd like to see him do a bit more. Right now, I think he is still trying to figure himself out when it comes to playing at that physical level, finding the right body type, because he's now at a 3-4 outside backer as opposed to a hand in the dirt DN, which I thought he kind of projected a bit better too. So I do think he has struggled to adapt a bit when it comes to that. On that touchdown play there with the tight end screen, you see him whiff on the running back chip there and not being able to get back to pressure the quarterback, giving them kind of that free release. So he's a guy that I had high hopes for. I had him rated as like a true first round grade for me. I felt like we got a bit of a slide there with him where we landed him. I felt like maybe it wasn't everybody's taste when it came to edge rushers, so we kind of benefited from that in the early second. But for me, he's definitely going to be a guy that he's safely in a rotational pass rush role right now. Like, you had Greg Rousseau, who is kind of a stud against run defense. That's his calling card. You have Bradley Chubb, who's more familiar with this scheme. And you have that second wave of Michael Hoyt and TJ Parker, who are going to come in. I think Parker's not going to be asked to do much other than just be an additional pass rush body out there to kind of do what you're talking about, be more of that stunt rusher, apply that pressure without, while shielding him a bit from the run defense, which has been kind of picked up from second-year player Landon Jackson, who has put on a ton of weight. He looks like an absolute fridge out there now. He got super jacked after he tore his ACL last year, or his MCL, and now he's back playing that more 5-tech role. So instead of forcing TJ Parker to be that more hand-in-the-dirt guy, add the weight, he's dropped a bit, is going to be more that pass rush side of it, and Landon Jackson, who is going to be, I think, a perfect fit for this defense in that role that they have him in now, is going to be kind of that compliment to him if they need a younger body out there to be the run defense type anchor.
Landon Jackson was always a tweener type, between, is he going to be a stand-up edge guy? Is he going to be, more of a defensive end in a 3-4 or whatever? And I feel like that's a good progression for him if he's not going to be the super twitched up athlete that he was on the fringe of being before he got hurt. So even having the injury, that sort of made the decision for him probably. But I feel like, one of the strengths of Buffalo's team is that interior line, that it feels like they're winning. They can deal with edge rushers who are just a solid group of good players at edge rather than superstar edge because they're so good in the interior. And, I love Deion Walker. Deion Walker was, like my favorite guy in the entire draft last year. So to get him and see that he's, having success there. I still don't really know the reasoning for trying to use him at nose tackle. I'm not really sure that's the best spot for him, but if it works, it works.
I can explain it to you right now. It's because they didn't have a nose tackle. That's the sole reason they had him there.
I understand.
They brought in Greg Gaines, who's now, I think, a lock to make the roster at this point, just because he rolled in off of like 4 days of practice, and 2 gap nose tackled, 0 tacked the entire game against Carolina, and in last week against the who was the game we played? Oh, the Browns.
Cleveland.
It was Browns. Yes, that was the game we played, not Carolina. And I think that's where they kind of found their guy that they were looking for that role. Last year, he played a lot of the one tech, but in that defense, it was a lot more of a penetration style one. You didn't really need them to have hands-on, kind of be a stack and shed type player. So now with them bringing in Greg Gaines, hopefully they're banking on Dwayne Carter, who bulked up to 330 pounds this past offseason. Maybe he could be a rotational guy to complement Gaines. And now it opens up, Walker and Oliver to kind of move along that defensive line. And like you were saying, provide more of that pass rush from the interior, along with what they want to do creatively with some of those inside blitzes like we saw in the first drive, and allow their pressure to come from all different points. Because it's kind of similar to what the Broncos did last year, where Jalen Laird's coming from with, they had a variety of guys that had 6+ sacks along that defensive interior, whether it was John Franklin Myers or Roach or some of these other guys. Yeah. I think that's what they're looking to do with them. And then with some of the younger guys that maybe aren't the cleanest fit, but they're going to try to find a role for them specifically as interior pass rushers, whether that's Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, some of the other young investments they've made.
Well, let me flip this on you for a second, because I have a guy similar to that from the standpoint of like, wonder what other people think of him outside of Pittsburgh fans, and that's Jack Sawyer, the edge, who has been since last year pretty much entrenched as the number 4 guy for Pittsburgh as an edge rusher, I sort of feel like his entire college career and pro career has been characterized by being in the right place at the right time a lot, and I don't know how repeatable it is, but I just kind of wonder how he appears, like. He's pretty much gotten stonewalled by a tight end that's not going to be on the team probably. Watching him here in this action, but I just kind of wonder what do you think of that guy in terms of what we were just talking about your edge guys for Buffalo?
Yeah, Kaliki Latu was the tight end that ended up getting the block on him in the run play there, who is definitely not going to be a rostered tight end for us. And if you're getting blocked by Latu, is more of a receiving style tight end, that's not the greatest thing. But I mean, Pittsburgh has those top 3 guys. I'm a big fan of their top 3. I was a massive Nick Herbig fan when he was coming out. But for Sawyer, I was kind of lower on him. I know a lot of people liked him because he put up those stats. And like you were saying, Ohio State, very much right place, right time, short arm, not the greatest athlete, but made plays work as a complimentary rusher. I think he's a player that this Bills team, he kind of fits in the same role that like they're looking for from a TJ Parker or a Javon Solomon at this point, where you have a guy who comes in, he's got limitations to his game, at least right now as a young player, and you're looking to maximize him by having him be a complementary piece. So for me, like Jack Sawyer, while I don't think he's going to crack those top 3 guys anytime soon, he's definitely a player that you can get away with being your 4th edge rusher, protecting him on snaps, and then allowing him to go out there and be, he could be a guy that has some splash plays, but then kind of melds in the background. He only plays 12 snaps a game, but one of those 12 snaps is a stuff or a sack or something like that. So there's always value for young bodies on rookie controlled contracts that can play head above water type thing. So that's his role. I think he can maybe get through and get fined by that, but I think he's gonna be one of those guys that bounces around that similar role. I don't think he has the tools to bounce above that kind of level at any real team, to be honest with you, with where he's at right now as a player.
They had a camp battle with Jimmy Davis. You know, Jimmy Davis was trying to make a transition from being an off-ball linebacker to being an edge rusher or a 3-4 edge rusher. And I thought that he actually showed pretty well in that role, far better than I thought he was going to. And I think he's really outplayed. He's, the first couple of weeks of preseason, I think he was sort of felt like he was all over the field. But I don't think he's going to make the team, and they're going to keep Sawyer instead. And it's sort of like they're keeping the safer, lower upside guy from the previous regime, right? And like you said, younger, and maybe the contract's more affordable.
Yeah, I would say because Davis, he was a first-round pick from Washington. For anybody who doesn't remember him, as an off-ball linebacker out of Kentucky, kind of a really late bloomer downhill. They're hoping he could be kind of that similar player to what they ended up getting in Bobby Wagner once they had brought him in under Dan Quinn. Bounced around a bit. I think the contract is going to really help Sawyer there because you have Davis on a 1-year deal, veteran player that you don't really have control if he does come out and performs, adequately enough. You have Sawyer on cost control, another 2 years on his contract, being where he was drafted. So I do think he's a player that they'll favor specifically because of that, which also dictate a lot of the Bills battles, I believe, which is why I feel like Cedric Van Granger's on when I was talking about the offensive line depth, he's one of those players that while he was a young player 3 years ago when they drafted him, he's now a player that's going to be running out of contract when on their rookie contract. They're going to be looking to favor some of these other rookies like Armaj Reed-Adams over him, specifically for that.
With Van Granger, though, if he wasn't playing the first 2 drives,
he hasn't been in there.
Well, that tells me that there's probably a trade and they don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah,
right?
Unless you think he's a lock to make it. Yeah.
I don't think he's a lock to make it. What do you think, Owen? Do you think Van Granger is moved here in the next 3 or 4 days?
I was a big fan of him coming out of Georgia. I do think that he's shown he's shown some ability to be a blocker. He's never really done enough to be a factor in this Bills offensive line rotation, even though he had some pedigree, was a draft pick by them. And we kind of talked about the depth of the offensive line a little bit earlier in this, and that he just hasn't shown out above those other guys, and he still has some value being on a rookie contract, having some, guys, some team's going to look at him and be like, hey, we have this draft profile from him from a few years ago. We have opportunities for him to maybe be an impact backup or even like a pinch starter for us if we're struggling at center. So he might have more inherent value than some of the other guys they do have. So I do think that is a legitimate option for him because I didn't have him making my final roster, and whether it's a cut or it's a trade, I think he's not going to end up making it.
Yeah.
So these wide receiver screens on 3rd and long just have to go. I'm sorry.
I mean, what are you learning about? I guess what I'm asking is, what are you learning about your quarterback when you ask him to throw a screen on 3rd and long? It's like it doesn't. I mean, I get it. They were having pass protection problems. They don't want him to get killed, but they also called a play action pass into a blitz. So if your quarterback can't get himself out of, and by the way, you've seen now in a couple of returns that Wetchen is just like there's nothing remotely scary about what he's doing right now. And yeah, guys need room to be successful as punt returners, but he's not really making that first guy miss.
So on Pittsburgh's second touchdown, what set up that field position? Was that a shanked punt?
I have to admit, I was so busy answering Owen's question that I'm not positive how they got
right.
There wasn't a big play.
No, Pittsburgh has been very fortunate with field position. I think this is the worst field position of Pittsburgh's 3 drives.
Well, if I remember correctly, they were backed up into their own end zone because they showed that punt, and he was in the back of his own end zone. So even if it wasn't, I think it might have been Wisnowski because they showed him shortly thereafter.
Oh, there was a 15-yard. There was a personal foul at some point, was there not? Maybe that's how they got moved. They moved.
Yeah, I think overall, I think the field position just wasn't great for them to start off with, and then in addition to that, I think there wasn't a great punt. There was probably a penalty. I didn't keep up with it because going back and forth with the conversation, but I do think that it was just kind of consistent chunk plays.
So
10, 7
number
yards.
99 is that Parker that just made that deflection?
Yeah. I'm curious, Will. So you were talking about the quarterback play and kind of how we're not really benefiting Shane Buechele right now when it comes to that.
Yeah.
The Bills, ever since Sean McDermott took over, and now it seems to be repeating itself, or I guess it would ever be since Josh Allen became Josh Allen. They have only ever carried 2 quarterbacks in the roster, Josh and then his primary backup. Now Josh has had this Iron Man streak, so it hasn't really bit them yet. So for me, I think Shane Buechele playing this whole game is mostly for him to get maybe an opportunity to be a rostered backup somewhere else. And he played at the end of the season for the Chiefs last year due to injury, and Olokun just not showing much. But I think that's what they're trying to accomplish here with that. I don't know if they're really giving him a ton of opportunities at the moment, but he's their inline guy because he works well with Josh Allen in that quarterback room to be the practice squad player that they've had for the past few years.
Yeah,
when it comes to
where he's headed, yeah.
So my question for you is that with Howard being starting at the first half, and then Aller going to be starting the second half, what has been the Steelers' trend with keeping quarterbacks with numbers? And if you've looked into McCarthy's history at all, what is his trends of keeping quarterbacks? Like, do they usually keep 3 to 4? They have options with Rudolph, Howard, and Aller.
Like I said, if they had 2 amazing developmental players and a backup that could, keep them, in a Super Bowl hunt for if they had to play for 3 weeks or something, then maybe you have an argument about you don't want that guy to go through waivers. But I actually can't imagine that if Will Howard went through waivers that he wouldn't clear and make it back to the practice squad. I mean, maybe somebody out there loves him so much more than I do, but I don't see that as being like a real risk. So they've been giving lip service to keeping 4 guys.
DJ Parker again on that pressure.
Yeah. By the way, Igbenogson, I thought, made a nice play. And then the turnaround to that was the play after, even though they had him sort of bottled up on third down, they lit an easy completion because Hamlin didn't do a particularly good job of playing in quarters. Quarters for safety is really hard, and it sort of is the separator, I think, for when somebody can really be counted on in quarters or not, is a big delineator for who's starting as safeties in the NFL, because if you're not good at that, you're going to get asked to do it a lot. But that was very, very soft coverage.
So, Will, Pittsburgh's offense here, if you have Maxwell Hairston at one corner and you have Davison Igbenogson at the other corner, what are you going to try to do to beat
the television coverage is my favorite part. I believe there was an interception, but the camera never left the quarterback. So he's looking for a foul.
Will, if you had to kind of identify like what the Pittsburgh wide receivers need to do against Hairston and Igbenogson, what would you be? Oh, you see, you were talking about that interception and my feed is lagging. I just saw that interception.
Yeah, well, it wasn't on
Damar Hamlin too.
It wasn't on the feed earlier. The camera shot missed it altogether. That's why you didn't see it, I think. But and Hamlin, after I was just talking bad about him, of course that play was the tight end turned the wrong way or whatever. But yeah, I think that you want to work the middle of the field. I mean, that's, to me, if I see you have 2 really good, man-to-man corners on the outside, because maybe if you have somebody really physical against Hairston, you might be able to get some hay out of that separation. Like if you have George Pickens or Metcalf against him, then I'm thinking I can win with a sort of power game against him. But I think he's in your back pocket no matter what moves you make, right? Very good cover guy.
Yeah, that's been the conversation because they drafted Igbenogson with a high pick this past year, and Hairston was drafted with last regime's first-round pick, or I guess the last coaching staff's first-round pick, as more of a zone-type corner, worried a bit about that physicality because he is an undersized guy. So a lot of the conversation since Igbenosson's been drafted is like, is there going to be matchups specifically? You have Christian Benford. You have your solidified one. Don't have to worry about him. When you're going against a team like Pittsburgh that's going to have a Metcalf, a Pittman, some bigger guys, do you run Igbenogson more often? Do you have a entrenched number 2? Is Hairston the number 2? And Igbenogson only gets roles when you put out a third corner? Or is there going to be more of a matchup independent thing? So right now with the backups playing, you have Igbenogson and Hairston on the field at the same time. If you're Pittsburgh, I think if you can get a guy with a mismatch out there, you do it. But I don't know how much they're diving into that when it comes to a preseason game in the second quarter.
No, definitely not. But I would also say you're getting Hairston some reps on the outside. But to me, his real advantage is when he plays in the slot, because if your receiver has a 2-way go, then you've got to, or you have to play sometimes zone or sometimes work different coverages. He's an ideal fit for that kind of role, more so than Igbenogson. I think is more. Oh, wow. He's also a versatile guy, but more strictly outside. I think it's him in the sideline, and he knows how to work that arrangement. But with Hairston, it's like he could just stay glued to you, even if you have a 2-way go. Those guys they can be really hard to find. It's hard. I don't even know if you need to be the most physical guy in the world to do that, but you have to be able to stick your nose in the run game and, stuff like that. So I mean, I suppose you see what he looks like on the outside, and if it works out for you, great. If you need him out there, he can do it. I like both those players a lot. In fact, I think that, I said the Buffalo D line is a strength. I think their secondary is also Steelers have a good looking secondary this year. I would trade it straight up for Buffalo's.
Yeah, like they have the outside corners where there's been kind of some question marks on what the translation is going to be. They don't really have a fourth outside corner right now. It's a battle between 7th round pick Toriano Pride from Missouri and then undrafted free agent Kenai Walker from Arkansas. I'm personally more of a fan of Arkansas than Pride, but Arkansas Walker than Pride. But what the Bills defense, I think their strength with their secondary is going to be is their kind of glut of slot players. I definitely think Harrison can play the slot. They brought in D. Alford on a free agent contract to be the starter there, entrenched. Mm-hmm. But you also have guys like Jordan Hancock that can come down and play the slot. CJ Gardner-Johnson can play the slot. You have a lot of these players that can come in and be that slot defender for corner where you have that versatility. It's just going to be more so trying to find these like strictly boundary corner guys. Benford, Igbinosun, Harrison, they're hoping can be that. I do think that's going to be potentially, and I ranked it pretty highly. We did a show last week covering what the Bills' projections for what their needs are going to be for the next 2 drafts. And I had corner relatively kind of a middle of the pack, more towards the top of the middle, just to add a 4th outside guy. Because like you're saying, Harrison can be a flexible player. Yeah.
Well, you can never have enough guys because sometimes their career peak is short, and you can get hurt, and suddenly you're trusting someone to stop a really difficult matchup. So you never know.
It's the most volatile position from season to season.
Yeah.
Who was good last year may not be good next year.
Yep.
But this is Buffalo's best field position of the day. We're almost in field goal range until that flag came out.
Oh, by the way, because we were talking about Harrison, his running mate at Kentucky is the one that made that tackle for a loss a minute ago, Brandon Eccles, who I don't think will make the team, but he's had a good camp in preseason. I think he may be one of those cats you see come back as a first-year player and and make a team. Probably not too far removed from doing that, or be a late season call up or something like that from the practice squad.
So yeah, Jim,
the Bills are actually they're in scoring position again. It's amazing.
Real quick, Jim, just to answer a question we had earlier in the stream, Bleacher Report and I guess Twitter from NFL's Twitter just tweeted out the video of why the Steelers had such good field position in that second touchdown they scored with the tight end. It was Wishnowsky punting out of his end zone, but it was such a shank that he nailed one of the chain gang guys in the head with the punt. So it ended up being like a punt that landed towards like the top of the 40s, maybe inside the 40, because he just shanked it out of bounds. So I think that was where you saw them getting their best field position there.
By the way, I would, before the draft, I would have been shocked that Buffalo would have drafted a punter, but the guy they drafted, I think is one of my co-hosts on the SteelerFury show is Corey Korbowski, who was a FBS or FCS. There you go. There's a touchdown for Gore's kids. Speaking of players' kids.
So your feed is so much faster than mine because I'm still waiting for the play to roll.
Oh,
sorry. I'm still on a Walmart ad at the moment. But
no.
Wow. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's all good. It's absolutely hysterical though. So touchdown, Frank Gore.
There were two Steelers that literally ran by him without him making a move. He just like hesitated after he had the ball in his hands, and 2 defenders literally just ran past him.
So Buffalo likely has a battle for the 3rd running back on the roster. I'm assuming Ty Johnson's actually going to open the season on IR. So whether it's Gore or another running back, there's a battle, I think, for that RB3.
Well, so Jim, when I was doing my roster prediction, I actually had the same idea, was that Ty Johnson, who's been hurt since training camp, was going to start the season on IR, get that free roster spot when you have it. Because we right now have Frank Gore Jr., who's been a staple on the Bills practice squad for the past few seasons and has been serviceable. But whoever your 3rd running back is going to be, Ty Johnson has carved out a role to get enough touches that, because he's such a good passing down running back, whether it comes to pass blocking or as a working out Josh Allen on those scramble drills. I think that the third running back isn't going to get a ton of run, and that Ray Davis maybe wanting to take a bigger role in the offense, maybe take on more of that receiving capabilities with Ty Johnson being out. So for me, I didn't even have one of the, whether Ian Wheeler or Frank Gore Jr. making the roster. I have it being two technically running backs with Johnson starting on IR, and then you have that 4-week period where Johnson can come off of IR after that 4 weeks to come back onto the field when he's fully healthy. And you just use one or both of those guys in your practice squad, use your elevations early up in the season to kind of compensate that, not burn an extra roster spot on a running back that's going to be, once Ty Johnson comes back, either cut fodder or you have to carry 4 running backs the whole season.
What's funny that with that rule, with the way that the roster rules changed for practice squad elevations, that really changes predicting 53s for teams. I mean, the same would be true for the Steelers. They got a couple of guys that haven't practiced at all. I don't think defensive lineman Joseph Day has practiced at all. Jaquan Brisker, I don't think has practiced at all. Joey Porter hasn't. So, Joey Porter, I don't think is really injured, but the other two guys, there's definitely some question as to whether they're going to be available week 1. So you never, it's, a guy just because he didn't make the 53 might still be suiting up for a month, different world.
What is going on with the corners there? Because there's been some trade rumors with Joey Porter Jr. I know they just had Ramsey come off of IR. So, what is going on with the Steelers cornerback room, and kind of what's the story there?
Yeah, they brought in Jamel Dean from Tampa to be the sort of number 2 corner. Ramsey's role, I think ideally he would be as their slot corner. In fact, he's the backup plan at free safety as well. They have a bunch of safeties. They just don't really have anybody who I would look at it and say that guy's a free safety type. So yes, you can try to be split safeties, looks and whatever, but they like to play this, man with a single high. And when you do that, you need to have somebody who can really play that position, who isn't just playing 25 yards off the ball and not really contributing. So Ramsey, is probably their second best free safety. Right now, he's going to be your slot corner. Joey Porter Jr. Has sort of put some of his penalty troubles that he had the first couple of years in the league aside, and his coverage grades, his like if you go to PFF, his grades are outstanding. He views himself as being a top 3 corner in the league, and he's looking.
That's all that
contract.
matters, right?
Yeah, so he's looking for this contract. I would say he's a top 10 corner in the league. That's probably fair. So the way he's gone about this negotiation, though, was to feign an injury so that he would go on a PUP list before camp started, as opposed to doing sort of the more team friendly, hold in, where you show up to practice and you don't put the pads on until you sign a contract, but at least you spend some time, being around the team, and you're showing that you're committed. And instead he's been on the PUP, and I don't even know if he's been coming to camp practices or anything. So they're unhappy with him. And I think the way they're expressing their unhappiness is to float this idea that they're going to trade him. I just don't think they're going to trade him. If you have a top 10 corner, the return that you would have to get to make it work, I just feel like you're just never going to get that compensation at this time of year. Maybe, on draft day or before the draft, you could swing a deal like that, but not now. So eventually I think they'll sign him, but it's a very real possibility it gets a little uglier than it is now, and he sits out for a few weeks or something. Not unprecedented, but yeah, they're essentially unhappy with him. Maybe they'll just work it out after camp is over. It's not impossible that they'll do that, but they have traditionally not negotiated with players once the season starts. So that's a time frame to think about. Is it really in the next couple of weeks something has to break?
So this is the 3rd year for the new kickoff rule, right?
Unless you're a UFL fan.
Yeah. So I don't even know if I remember the old kickoff now. I'm looking at it like that's just a normal kickoff. It only took 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it sinks in. It sinks in quick. You get used to stuff quickly, don't you? Try going back to your the computer that you were using 10 years ago, and you'll see how much your world has changed.
Oh, something? I just replaced my computer. It was about last year at this time. But the computer that I had since 2016.
No, yeah.
And the only reason that I replaced it was that it was going to be cheaper to buy a new computer than it was to replace the operating system on the other one.
There you go.
So,
Well, they say that's like 7 years for each year the computer is old. So it's like driving a car that's 70 years old. Right. So that's about what it is in technological terms. So here you're talking about the Steelers running back battle. It's Lou Nichols from what was it, Akron? Can't remember what he was in the MAC, Central Michigan, Akron, Eastern Michigan, one of those schools, who is he's been a sort of a perennial preseason guy he's been on 3 teams. He always looks great in preseason and has played in 1 NFL game in 4 seasons. So he is in the game right now playing running back ahead of Caleb Johnson and Eli Heidenreich. I saw Travis Homer got 1 snap earlier on a 3rd down.
Now, is that what we talked about earlier, where it's in these third preseason games, the guys who are maybe solidified either don't play or play a ton? Do you think that may be impacting some of that, or do you think that this is actually someone who could be a big team over those other 2 names?
I think they would like Lou Nichols on the practice squad because I think he's a guy that if you lose one of your top 2 backs, that he can take some running touches and do something with it, right? If his role is to come in and be the relief running back that relieves the starter for a series, like the 4th series of the game or something. I think he can be pretty good in that role. I just don't know that you can carry him on a roster without contributions in a lot of other ways. But I think they would like to, keep him and for a young player, he's experienced. I think they like that idea for a veteran, what they view themselves as being a contending team, which I'm not sure really that's true. But since they see it that way, they might like to do that. I mean, I think the way it's shipping up right now is that it's more or less someone has to knock Travis Homer out of the job in order to take it away from him tonight. And it really remains to be seen if any of the younger guys can do that.
And so we're still at Will Howard at quarterback, like we said. It's not going to be a switch till the halftime. What's your read on with Mason Rudolph there? Is he safe with making the team, or do you think they're going to go to 2 young guys over him?
Wow. I think it really hinges on how much they really believe that Will Howard is a future prospect for something other than a career backup. So if they feel like he's got more to him than that, possibility wise, then it would be foolish to keep Mason Rudolph on the roster. If they are sort of, Will Howard is worth having around, and we're gonna give him some opportunities to grow. We like him; he's a good kid, whatever. Then, I would say Howard is the guy that gets cut, and Rudolph stays. For me personally, I don't see any value to having a guy like Mason Rudolph on a roster. I don't think the difference between the backup situation is that maybe you got to come in for a game and you finish one game, start the next week, and then your starter comes back. Like that's a more or less the standard scenario for backup quarterbacks. And I'm in zero way convinced that as raw as Drew Aller is, that you couldn't have him come in for a week and a half and give you more or less the same result that Mason Rudolph is going to give you.
And to that point, if Will Howard or Mason Rudolph is on the practice squad, I don't know that another team is plucking them off the practice squad. But if Drew Aller is on the practice squad, I think another team's going to grab him.
Yeah, I think that's a better bet because he's younger. You haven't seen what he can't do yet. It's all about, for quarterbacks, it's sort of, you have to prove, you show me what you can't do, and then we'll figure out where you should go. And that's the thing about Mason Rudolph. He has demonstrated aptly for over a very long period of time in a lot of games what his limitations are. And I would say, that puts him in the sort of, I'm not even sure he's in the top half of the league in terms of the veteran backups. So he's a middle third to bottom, to top of the bottom third veteran backup maybe. So why suffer cutting a guy that you actually care about to keep him on the roster? Like I said, it's yes. Is he more polished than rookies are? Sure. But I'm not sure the actual difference in gameplay that he's going to give you over a game and a half is not so different. Yeah. So I trust having a rookie. There's been a couple of teams recently that won the Super Bowl with a rookie backup. They did perfectly fine when they came in the game. So
Yeah, and we have a comment that Howard won't clear waivers. I don't think Will Howard qualifies as one of the 64 best quarterbacks in football.
Oh no, Will Howard's not getting claimed. I mean, it would surprise. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would surprise me if he did. Aller, I think, would get picked and would get claimed.
Yeah. Aller, I think, would be one of the top 64 prospects for a quarterback, right? Like if a team says, like if you're Minnesota and Drew Aller is there,
why not?
Yeah,
why not?
Like Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, Drew Aller. I can probably find a starting quarterback out of one of the three, and it's not Kyler Murray. And I'm glad that made you
not
laugh.
JJ McCarthy. So yeah,
exactly.
I real quick note for what just happened with the game, because peek behind the veil. I had my game running on the NFL Plus app, and for some reason it kicked me off my stream. The only options I had were like the Browns, Patriots, and the Cardinals, whoever they're playing. So I had to go surf the 7 Seas to go get the stream up now.
Actually, if you go to NFL, since you have an NFL Plus membership, if you go to NFL.com and look for the NFL Network live feed, that's what I'm watching. It's been working perfectly, and I'm ahead of both of you guys, I think.
But I was saying that
I want to go back. I want to go back to this comment because I think Craig misunderstands something. So the top 64 quarterbacks on a roster are on the 53. Not very many teams keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53. Like, for example, Buffalo typically has not. Buffalo's third quarterback, Shane Buechele, will be on Buffalo's practice squad. So the quarterback you're watching play. So, like, Craig, I don't know if you're here for Steelers, Bills. Thanks for stopping by. But I would still say I could probably come up with, I know that Will Howard is not one of the 64 best prospects, so he's not going to be in a 53. And you're right, maybe there's not 32 better third-string quarterbacks, but most of those third-string quarterbacks aren't on an active roster. They're on a practice squad. So, anyway, I wanted to address that.
I want to quick shout out. So I was bringing up the stream thing because I pulled it up just in time to see Ray Davis return that punt, that he's back out there. I know that I think after the muff, they gave Hardman a few opportunities at it, but I like that they went back to him right away.
I appreciate that in coaching that can deal with that, because if you just immediately first ditch the guy immediately, chances are it's not gonna be good for his. You're trying to develop a guy's confidence, and if you just yell at him and pull him after the first mistake he makes, it's like that doesn't bode well for developing a player.
That was Michael Pettis, who that long pass was intended for, and he is in a battle. Dante Pettis, I'm sorry. Dante Pettis, and he's in a battle for wide receiver 6 or a practice squad spot.
Not a great throw. He's NFL open there. Probably
he's always been a guy I've been a fan of. I'm a big University of Washington fan, and the team that got me into them was the John Ross, Jake Browning, Vita Vea team that ended up going 4th overall, ranked 4th and losing to Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. Dante Pettis was the number 2 receiver that year behind John Ross. He's always been a player I've been a big fan of. He's a 2nd-round pick. He has physical tools. He's got that speed, which you saw there. He can get open. It's more so been the health issue, but he's also a super dangerous return man. We have this kind of back and forth about the punt return all night so far, and he's been a guy that can be a punt returner and a kick returner and impact the game that way.
By the way, coverage on that was Denico Slaughter, who's shown very well for the Steelers. I don't know if there's a spot for him with the cornerback room being kind of deep, but like, for instance, if Joey Porter Jr. were to hold out at the beginning of the season, he might be the last guy to make the roster. But it's another, I don't know. I feel like some teams, Arkansas is a team where I think they had way more talent than what their team produced on the field, because there's a lot of guys, you see them in the league and you're like, wow, that guy can really play. Like, where was that? Because their defense was awful. Their secondary was terrible. And you got 2 guys from their secondary in this game who both had good camps, played very well in preseason. So this punter battle, you guys think it's pretty much done for Buffalo, right?
If you draft a punter, he's making the team.
Yeah.
The only one that didn't was drafted by Buffalo, and that was Matt Araiza.
Yeah. I feel like Wisnowski is not – he is one of the top 32 punters in the world, so it wouldn't shock me if he ended up with a job shortly. All right, that might have been the most interesting return that Wetchen has had in 3 games. He at least appeared to make a couple of guys miss.
So, Will, where were you on Zane Durant in this upcoming or in this past draft?
I liked him. I didn't. I'll be honest. I didn't see a ton of Florida football games. Meaning, yes, I might have seen cut-ups of him and everything, but I sort of like to see players in the games to get a feel for when the game's on the line, these are the guys that make plays. So I don't really know that much about him as a prospect in terms of game wise, but I sure liked him, and I feel like he he's not the Florida guy. He's Penn State. Sorry, I mixed up my story. I really liked him at Penn State. Sorry, I was thinking about Gaines. We were talking about Gaines before. He's the Florida guy, right?
Yes.
Had that in my head. Sorry, back up a step. I thought both Penn State guys were really intriguing, and it shocked me actually. Durant's testing I thought was incredible, as I recall. So he's a better athlete than I expected that he was, and I don't know. They have a pretty good track record of those defenders coming out of Penn State.
So real quick, I was just checking this out from our partners over at FanDuel, who gracefully sponsor this podcast. I was looking at some of the odds here. If I had to give you guys a guess, maybe each of you get a guess as to who the team is and then what the line actually is. Between the Bills opening the season in Houston and the Steelers opening home against the Falcons, who is the bigger favorite in the two, Bills or Steelers? They're both favorites. Who do you think is the bigger favorite in both those games?
Steelers.
Well, I would say Steelers only because I think Houston's defense, that's early in the season, especially that's when they're healthy, good matchup for them.
So yeah, they're both favorites. What do you think the difference is between the favorites and the favorite lines?
It shouldn't be more than a point.
I'd say Buffalo's favored by 2 and Pittsburgh's favored by 5.
Pittsburgh is currently opening right now, again, thanks to FanDuel, at -3 over the Falcons.
Okay.
Which I'm definitely, when I do my first week's betting, I'm hammering that. I don't know how you feel about that, Will, but the Bills are opening -1.5 point road favorites against the Houston Texans.
Oh, they're playing on the road. I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's a 1.5 point difference, but I feel like the Steelers are way better bet there to take them giving points than the
I don't know. Is Jack Strand going to play in that game? If Jack Strand starts for them, I want Atlanta in the points. But yeah, I think they're going to start Penix.
Yep. And if anybody watching doesn't know, Atlanta still doesn't know who their starting quarterback is week 1.
No, so we certainly don't, because they don't, right? Jack Strand, by the way, chapeau. That kid has put on a show for Atlanta. So anyway, it's funny because Tua has looked terrible. Penix is just now healthy. I've forgotten who the fourth guy is. He's the fourth guy used to be the backup in Dallas.
Cooper Rush.
What's that?
Cooper Rush.
Yeah. I was going to say the ginger from Dallas, but yeah. And I don't think any of them has really looked any good. So Jack Strand, on the other hand, has looked great. I would be like game 3. I would just hand him the ball, mix in some second and first team guys with him and see, let it go.
Will, tell us about your right tackle number 71 who just got.
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. The tackle situation for Pittsburgh, is just not good. But this is Max Inicher. This is his first Eniaker. Yeah, this is his first action. He got injured in camp. I think he had a biceps injury, or biceps injury or some kind of shoulder injury, and he's only been practicing for 2 days after missing 3 weeks or something. So
that was number 71 is Max Inicher.
Yeah, that is their
rookie tackle.
That's correct. That's the future. And the thing is, they've had so much trouble with the tackles this preseason. But yeah, so that was kind of like his welcome to the NFL right there. I think.
How did you feel about that pick? I wasn't. So I liked Inicher just coming out as being like a big athlete, but there was a lot of things I didn't love about him. But
so okay, we used 3 different pronunciations, and I'm actually forgetting what is the accurate one. So I apologize, Max, if your parents are listening. Eniaker, is that not it?
You might know better than I, because
I
might have heard it more.
I don't. I'm saying it's like I think it's like it's somebody whose name, as someone whose name was always butchered when I was a kid. My last name, I would like to pronounce it correctly. But how did I feel about that pick? I actually very much like it. I believe I duplicated that in one of the mocks that I did before the season started. Yeah, I feel like he's still young, and yet is not the experience level, like, which would make you believe that there's a lot of meat left on the bone, a lot of upside to his play. I think the only way he's going to get better is reps, and the problem with that is you got a quarterback who's 50 years old in the pocket, and you have, they basically have a guy that played the last third of the season at left tackle last year, who was Dylan Cook, who gave up like one pressure that towards the end of the season as a left tackle. But they had a guy at right tackle that they really wanted to move to left tackle, so they moved their tackle. It was a first round pick a couple of years ago to the other side, and they moved Cook, the former backup who became the starter at left tackle. They moved him to right tackle. He's struggled playing right tackle. They've struggled. Both tackles have struggled with the position switch, is what I'm trying to say. And Broderick Jones, the guy who was another first round pick at tackle that they had, can't play either side. Had an injury that they thought was going to end his career last year. He made it back from the injury, but he weighs like 275 pounds or something too crazy. So he's not really ready to play either. They go into the season with a real question mark at tackle. Like, if Max doesn't win the job and really show tonight that like he's ready to go, then they're going to be putting someone out there who is not going to be steady in pass protection, which I think when you have Aaron Rodgers is something that's very important. The difference between his play when he had a clean pocket versus when he was under pressure is like night and day at this stage.
So I just listened to the Steelers official YouTube channel where they interviewed Max, and they asked him first question, how do you pronounce your last name? And Craig actually got it pretty close. It's Ionichor instead of Ionichor. Ionichor.
Okay.
Yeah.
From now on, I'll never say it wrong. No, I think I probably had it. I learned how to spell it. That's the thing. When you're promoting a prospect that has a hard spelling of the last name, and everybody always abbreviates or uses a nickname or whatever. But I'm like, I like to actually learn how to spell it so that I can go into, posting the name properly. So I learned how to spell his name pretty quickly. But yeah, Ionichor. So yeah, that was a very inauspicious beginning for him. So
Andre Jones has been a consistent, another guy that he's been up and down on the Bills roster last year when they had a ton of injuries to edge, consistently practice squad guy. So he's not a bona fide NFL like 53 guy, but he's always one of those like bubble 56, 57 level players that will always see action for the Bills during the season. He's usually all four of his promotions from the practice squad get used up through the season. Yeah. So that's not the worst guy to get beat by in this, back half of the second quarter of a preseason week 3 game.
Well, and I think it's really important, like preseason game 3 for me, I'm into this because in order for a team to get through an NFL season, they're going to need about 70 players, right? Usually, so most teams, it's 70 to 80 players around the 53. Yeah. So the players you're seeing now, hey, the division could be on the line in like week 16 or week 17. And they're going to have to play meaningful snaps.
Or you'll see them show up for a different team. They'll get picked off the practice squad and elevated somewhere else, whatever. So, by the way, the international player I was talking about, Julius Welchoff, who played at Michigan, he's now playing the right defensive end for Pittsburgh. So, he's an interesting story because athletic freak. He's the kind of athletic freak that you want, in an edge defender. But he's now a little overaged and finally at the point where it's sort of like he either has to figure out a way to make it onto a roster or this is going to be it for him, I think.
That's the third target and second catch for Skylar Bell, correct?
Yes, as far as I've seen.
If it's a catch, I see they're rushing to the line. Not sure about that one.
Is that Skylar Bell again? Look at that.
Yeah.
I'm liking this. And this is Skylar Bell's first preseason game, Will. So he hasn't played at all.
Oh, I didn't realize that because I'd seen him practice. I saw him in practice. I saw some highlights in practice.
He had a tweak before the first game, and they said that if it was a win or die game, he would have forced through it and played if they needed him. But they were keeping him out for the first 2 preseason games, so he didn't play either of those. This is his first action in the preseason first live NFL game day action.
Well, speaking of, I use this. I was talking about a different player, talking about TJ Parker in this regard. I felt like his college career, like he was so polished that when he showed up in the All-Star season, it was like he was almost a step ahead of the younger players who hadn't played as much. He had more tricks in the bag. He had more concept of like what to do to be successful. And I feel like that's so maybe I call that out, maybe more of a high floor guy than a ceiling guy. But I do think that is for a team with a quarterback like Josh Allen, who's ready to go right now. He's a guy that if you had to count on him for some meaningful snaps, that he could be dependable, because he's not a raw rookie. He's not as raw a rookie as most rookies are. At a position I think takes a year or two to really drop in.
So Pittsburgh's defense really tightened there. Once they got in Buffalo's face, we had trouble moving the ball.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think the first 2 or 3 passes, there was only 4 guys rushing. Once they put 6 guys on the line of scrimmage, it didn't seem like we could separate or we could block everybody.
Well, I feel like what I've learned about Rochelle so far in this game is that his checks on protection are not necessarily at an NFL level yet, because I feel like the way that they really defeated him more than anything else was when they threatened at the line like that it was dependent on if they had the right play call or not. He wasn't calling them out of that play or changing protection as well as more experienced quarterback in the NFL might.
So, and I think on that one drive, so they came out, obviously 2-minute offense. I'm sure Josh Allen, who is out, isn't playing in this game, but was said to have been calling some plays for this game as a kind of de facto offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator for this game. I think he might have turned the play sheet over to Joe Brady on that drive. They fed Skylar Bell 3 or 4 of the targets. I think there was 5 total passes, and he had almost all of the targets on that drive. Yeah, because that last incomplete was also a force to him on that slant. They played it pretty tough. And I wasn't the biggest Skylar Bell fan in the draft process. I agree with you that I think he's more floor than ceiling. He's a 25-year-old rookie. You'd hoped so that would be the case with a player like him. And I think he's added to this roster specifically to be kind of that player they haven't had when they've been hit with injuries, to be able to come in and play.
It's not good when you gave up a sack in your first pass rush and then they put the circle around you for the penalty call. So,
against Andre Jones again too.
Yeah,
but I think Skylar Bell is going to be a guy that they're going to try to rely a bit more on when it comes to those depth roles, or when there are injuries like there are right now with Keon Coleman. Shakir hasn't been playing in the preseason. I definitely think he's going to have a bigger role, but he's not a player that precludes me from investing a high pick in the wide receiver again next year, which is the lack of the ceiling there.
Well, I think the key to a good wide receiver room is you just have to keep investing picks, and it works better if you keep 6.
Yeah.
Right. So I think when Buffalo was keeping 5, 4 of them have key roles on game day. It's harder to put like a developmental 5th wide receiver because you still need that 5th guy to play special teams.
Yep.
I think carrying 6 receivers allows you to keep investing draft picks, even if they're round 4, 5, 6 guys, to let you kind of build the room, like they say, like a basketball team. But you need room on the roster in order to keep them.
I feel like
some teams a safety.
I feel like some teams are just more forward looking, and other teams are just in the moment in terms of the decisions that they make. But I feel like good teams are thinking about keeping it going, the waves, what is it, perpetuating their existence, etc.
Well, I think the bigger issue in Buffalo is the GM not wanting to be wrong. And what I mean by that is, like, we kept Cody Ford one season too long. That cost us keeping like Nick Broker, right? This is Nick Broker's 3rd stint with Buffalo, Will. And he's only been in the league 4 years.
By the way, that pressure there that almost resulted in the safety, that's Dylan Cook, the left tackle, who didn't give up any pressures at the last 5 games of the season last year. And, of course, immediately gives up pressure in this game. So, yeah, whatever's going on with Pittsburgh's offensive line. Well, and the thing is, he's played almost the entirety of the preseason at right tackle, and now they put him back to his more natural position, the left tackle. And he's got to make adjustment to that. Anyway,
so we are at halftime now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, rolling into halftime
Okay.
right now.
So why don't we spend a little bit of time on Bruno Fina? Will, did you have a scouting report on Bruno Fina?
Well,
When
I'm ready to talk Jerry O because that was the prompt that I got, that I have to be prepared to talk about Jerry O's scouting report.
well,
But we should talk about Fina. I don't have a detailed scouting report on him.
you don't. Okay. And
His
and
on his dad, yes, because I remember seeing quite a lot of
Yep.
him. Yeah.
so Owen, I know that you had a scouting report on him coming out of Duke, and then what have you seen through 2 preseason games when you went back and you watched?
Yeah, I think Bruno, he's done. You can see the lineage of him being in the son of an NFL great and John, and he's an offensive tackle that comes in just a hair heavier than 300, maybe probably weighs in actually a hair under 300 pounds. So he's got the athletic movement ability. I think a lot of the questions I had with him as a college prospect was just going to be measurables or just to be able to play at a physical level in the NFL. But I do think he's able to hold up athletically, and if not a benefit of his strength, he definitely can be like maybe hold his head above water type. There's nothing you're really going to look at as like a long-term, developmental guy. But for me, what has been super exciting this preseason and this camp has been them moving him around the offensive line as much as they have. And they've, I don't know if he's permanently a tackle or if he's going to be more of an interior player. He's been starting at center. He got to start at center today against the Steelers, and I think he's looked relatively fine. I don't know if a lot of the issues have been on him or if it's been Buechele with the slides, or just Pittsburgh cooking up a lot more pressures. But for me, I think with Fina, he's safely played himself into contention for that practice squad spot because a lot of the depth they're going to have is going to get either claimed or make the team on the interior. And if Fina can play center, which he's been doing this game, and he's shown to be able to play guard, and I do think he can be a tackle in a pinch. That's where he did play some at Duke. So I do think he could be a player that has kind of every position versatility and still offer something when it comes to a developmental upside because he has those athletic traits. He has that kind of bloodline to him. So if you're going to bring in a guy to be your more developmental offensive tackle or offensive lineman, which they've done every year since Brandon Beane has been there, whether it was David Edwards the years previous or it was Nick Broker, it was Ike Butker, Alec Anderson, you're looking for that next guy who is going to clear waivers because no one else really values him as much. The Bills have some inflated value because he is, son of Bills royalty. So you think that that's going to also give him some favor with the team. But I do think he has some of that upside that you're like, okay, if we give him some time to cook in that practice squad role, could he be that eventual kind of developmental depth piece for us? I think that is in the cards for him with what he's shown so far.
And you bring up a good point, right? Because Alec Anderson spent time on Buffalo's practice squad. Ryan Vandemark did. There was at least 2 other offensive linemen, and I'm trying to remember who, where they started on the practice squad, and then about a year later or 2 years later, they're on the 53.
There was McDermott was one of the ones that ended up going and playing as a key backup for like the Bears and the Patriots a few years ago. And there was another.
Ryan Bates.
Ryan Bates, yes. Right, like Butker's another one. There's been a few guys that they've found a really good swing of bringing in developmental guys to cook in the practice squad that eventually become NFL offensive linemen. And I think Bruno could definitely be the next line of lineage, and he's in a great spot to do so because there's a proven track record.
Well, one thing I could tell you from just seeing him a little bit in preparing for this and in seeing him tonight is, he looks comfortable at center, and I know he played that in college. I feel like if you can show yourself to be comfortable enough to get thrown in the game at center and not be embarrassing, and have the capability to play guard, your chances of getting an elevation from practice squad to game day are pretty good. As you said, over the course of a long season, guys get hurt, and you need someone to come in, be available, who can back up multiple positions on game day. So that's already a nice plus for him. I think that, shorter arm length, he's always going to have some issues with guys who are also as good technique players and good, smart football players as he appears to be, but who have longer arms and better athleticism, right? So that's the thing. It's your limitations. You can get away with that against players that don't play the game as well as you do. But if you match up against somebody who also has that in their bag, then that's the thing. You got to figure out how to counter to that.
Okay. And then, Will, did you want to share your scouting report on Jerry Ostroski? Owen and I have podcasted with Jerry quite a bit, but I know that because you had something on him.
Well, we were
know
talking about Mars Adams before, right? And how he's he's starting to get pigeonholed as being a sort of a right tackle type. But what I would say is about what if you're evaluating guards, you think this guy's a good puller. This guy's a good mauler in a phone booth. This guy's a good pass protector. This guy's, so like whatever the types of guards you would want. I think Jerry's calling card was that he was very good at all of them. He was I don't mean to downplay his talent by saying he was a versatile piece, but his versatility was actually a real strength for him. So I kind of feel like that was rare. It hadn't, most guards were either lighter pulling guard types who weren't necessarily that as bulky. They were just really good on the move and they could get out in front of the sweeps when teams that like to run that outside sweep with a pulling guard or power to that side or whatever. They would just get guys who were really good on the move. They were essentially stock blockers like you'd use a tight end for now. And then, maybe you'd be a guard that wasn't so mobile, but you were really, you were built like a tree trunk and you could, just keep guys, keep the pile moving and so on and so forth. But yeah, he had a very, for a bigger guy, was a really good mover and was, I think he could win. He could beat you in every possible way as a guard. So like you note guys like that, not only when they're coming into the NFL, but as somebody, succeeded the way he did in his NFL career, he succeeded because, he just was, there was a very difficult to come up with a plan to beat him. And I off the top of my head, I one thing I probably could have dug into was to try to see like, who was the guy that he either surprised by being able to outplay or that he struggled with. Because I think it'd be hard to find somebody that he really struggled with. Maybe somebody get him on a play or two, but yeah, I really appreciate his
first game ever was against John Randall.
Yeah, I remember this is because that's a story that I think he told while I was watching their show during the during the draft. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's like it definitely that'll wake you up, in a hurry coming into the NFL as a guard. But yeah, I would imagine that, he wasn't out quicking John Randall in the hole, to like at a positional block, but that he was no slouch at the leverage game and that idea of winning in the trenches. So, you don't play in the league as long as he did for a good team without having that skill set.
Okay, so what we're going to do to fill up halftime is we're going to do 53 player roster projections. The twist is that we'll go position group by position group. Will give his for Buffalo. Owen will give his for Pittsburgh. And then Owen can counter Will. Will can counter Owen because they're the experts for their specific teams. But Will, why don't we start at wide receiver for Buffalo? Who were your projected wide receivers that you had?
I got to remember that mine are here on the left. My projected wide receivers for Buffalo, and apologies, Buffalo fans. I'm like barely know your team, although I think it's pretty set. I have Keon Coleman, DJ Moore, Shakir, Joshua Palmer. I actually like the idea of Skylar Bell and Sherfield. I originally had Macklin in this or Hardman, but I don't think they're going to keep that many guys. I have a feeling that it stops before it gets to that point, and that roster spot will go to somewhere else. I'm so used to like not picking a team, or not predicting a team that has only two quarterbacks. So I'm like, where's that extra player going to come from? Probably offensive line for the Bills, but at any rate, those are the, to me, you want Sherfield as that last guy. I think he can do more for you on not only on special teams, but he's a guy that can, give you a couple catches here and there if you need something.
Yeah, so I have the exact same wide receiver room. I do have to add the caveat that Tyrell Shavers is on long-term IR towards ACL in the playoff game against the Jags last year, so he's done for the whole season anyway. So he's an additional seventh receiver that'll be on the roster, but isn't going to count against them. Won't play a snap for the team this year. But he was kind of, if he was healthy, he'd be the kind of that you wouldn't have any question. Right now, the question is between Sherfield and Hardman for me. I would prefer Sherfield because he's probably their best gunner and punt return blocker on the outside as a receiver. So for me, that's a lot more valuable than what we're talking about with the whole first half with punt return when it comes to Hardman being a returner. Hardman also just doesn't really offer much to the offense. They try to give him the ball on some design touches, screens, and it's drops. It's been bad all preseason. So you just find a Band-Aid for the punt return spot. Don't let Caden Wetchen get away from the Steelers because I think the Bills would pounce all over that for their return guys because he might not drop a punt. But for me, I think Sherfield has that inside role just because he does so much else for you on special teams. He's not going to be a returner, but you're right. He also is a good blocker. They utilize a lot of the wide receiver blocking role.
Sherfield's a gunner on punt, right? I mean, that right there is like there are not that many guys at wide receiver can do that.
Yes, yeah, he offers so much value outside of also being a guy on wide receiver that can contribute a catch or two during the season. He had a touchdown catch the last time he was a Bill in a do or die game against the Dolphins to win the division. So he's a guy that Allen is also kind of familiar with in that case.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't
know.
Like
Owen, you want to?
Oh, go ahead.
Well, so Owen, you want to give Will your wide receivers on your Steeler roster projection?
Yeah, I was curious how many receivers they keep. I went with the typical 6 just because that's kind of the number that felt right in general.
They've under Tomlin they kept 5 frequently. It's not impossible that they would do that again, but I feel like with Mike McCarthy, you'd think that they would keep a 6th guy. So.
Yeah, so the knockouts, obviously the ones that are going to be there are Metcalf, Pittman. I think those two are obviously there. Bernard as well with draft capital. And then it was Roman Wilson, who I liked coming out of college, but I haven't really heard much from him as a Steelers player. I know he's got some frustration with the fan base, just not being a guy to take the next step.
He's not a good fit for what they've, during the time he's been on the roster. He needs to be in like a Mike McDaniel offense or Sean McVay, because he's a guy that in college he benefited from being put in motion, even on the interior, just like taking a couple steps and getting a sort of a leverage over a player who wasn't as fast as him, and then he would be able to, get space against that player. And so the Steelers offense has been very static in comparison, and they don't really create opportunities for him to use that speed.
And then I have Ben Skoranek as kind of your special teams guy, definitely gonna be locked there for that. And then I went with Wetjen as my 6th receiver. He's been so relevant in the return game so far. Like, even though he hasn't been maybe the most flashy or a pop guy, he's been a consistent returner for them in the preseason. He's also had a couple big plays, has some room to grow there. So I had him making it as the 6th receiver, but I'm curious who the other guys in that battle are for you personally, Will, for that 6th receiver spot.
Skoranek has been the most dependable, healthy receiver that they've had for the entirety of camp. Metcalf, I shouldn't say that. Metcalf he was healthy enough, but he's also out, I think, at the moment. And Pittman really hasn't practiced very much. And Skoranek, although a really good special teams player, and that's where he made his mark, has been a very productive receiver. He scored the Steelers' first touchdown last year. And in the preseason, anytime he's got an opportunity, he's made plays. So for me, he's easily, the number 4 guy that I would trust to bring into a game. I think they will keep Roman Wilson. I don't think there's a real market for moving him. And I think that's, probably in the cards. Me personally, if I were picking, I would have Max Hurlman as the 6th receiver, but I agree with you. I think they'll keep Wetjen. I think Hurlman can be a solid returner, and he's a much better, more productive player as a receiver that I think Wetjen will end up being in terms of offering something different for the team that they don't have otherwise. But I think, Wetjen may develop into more.
Yeah, preseason football must have the fastest halftime known to man.
Quick, back on. I know. I see it happening.
We're back, and I had this whole plan to do a 53-player roster projection for each team over halftime. Yeah, that plan just went out the window.
Well, we talked too much. We talked too much about it, but there'll be commercials. We can hit it on a commercial, Jim. You just got to be ready to fire.
Yeah. So, Owen, Drew Alar is in at quarterback for Pittsburgh. You want to tell everybody about what you like about Drew Alar?
Yeah, he was a player that the flaws are obvious, right? Like he has some issues when it comes to reading a defensive post snap, being able to process through things, especially in his last year there at Penn State. But I feel like the whole Penn State offense in general was kind of a nightmare to begin with. So there's not much I want to put like super stock into him not being able to ever do that. But he's a big guy, can move. You know, he had the injury, but he definitely can still move athletically. He has a big arm. He was a guy that I saw so much more upside with him than a player like even like Ty Simpson, that he ended up being my quarterback 2 last year. Now, that was a super hot take because I wasn't a big Ty Simpson fan in general, especially after teams started getting like film on him and being able to figure him out. So I'm a big believer in Drew Allar. He's looked good this preseason. I'm excited to watch him play against the Bills backups here, or third stringers, and see if he can continue kind of that hot streak, especially with, I think with getting him into
there.
Yeah, getting him into McCarthy's offense can allow him to play a bit more into his strengths, as opposed to I think what Penn State was really trying to force him to do last year. And when you're talking about a backup that can come in and play snaps for you when you have like a game or two that, you know, if Rodgers misses, you can do much worse than having Allar come off the bench, and you know you'll live with his lumps. And if he just has to be kind of Mike McCarthy's puppet out there, I think he can handle that.
I think his confidence was thoroughly broken at Penn State, and that, you know, whether he ever gets past that and gets through you know, kind of gets over what that was like, I can't say, but I do think that it's, you know, you see tools. It's kind of like he has all the tools. It's all the other stuff that's not tools that's the issue. Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Oh, no, it looked like they were going no huddle, but that was just a single play that they just went straight to the line. And I was going to ask you a question on that, but so
yeah, they don't.
Will, what are your
they haven't
thoughts
shown very
on
much
Alar?
no huddle at all since Ben retired. That's kind of when it ended for Pittsburgh.
And Will, how do you feel about Alar? Like, is he your QB4? Do you want him on the 53?
I would have him as the number 2, not because I'm in love with him. I just feel like give him the reps, give him a chance. By the way, this is Eli Heidenreich in running back. And one thing really interesting about Eli Heidenreich in the preseason, every run has been between the tackles, and they have yet to target him in the pass game. And if you knew what he was in college, yeah, it's like this almost makes me feel like he's making the team because they're working him at the stuff that they don't know if he can do or not. But I noticed that he's been playing up back all night. He's been the personal protector on the punt team, and I feel like that's the role for him. That it's, you know, that's the job he has to win in order to be able to make the team. So it's interesting to me.
Eli Heidenreich was the running back wide receiver out of Navy, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, give the listeners a little bit of background on him, Will.
So Eli, I mean, the story in Pittsburgh, he's from Pittsburgh, and he was their 7th round pick. He played actually for the rival high school to my high school, Mount Lebanon High School, which is good for him. They were a much better program. But Eli at Navy was kind of the do-it-all guy. You know, he played a lot of flanker, and he got a lot of running gigs from running touches from flanker. And then he was, if they needed a key catch, he moved to either slot receiver, sometimes even outside receiver. And then in their 4-minute offense, he was the guy they handed the football to. So in effect, he was their best player, not named Landon Robinson. And, you know, he proved that he could do it all. And then people were excited about him as a potential prospect for the NFL, but then he tested like Christian McCaffrey. Like, so when you look at him, you're like, he could theoretically be in an offense where they used him like that, and he might have those skills. So that's what the projection, they haven't used him like that in preseason at all. So they're either not convinced that he can be that guy. Here's Max Herman, the guy that I suggested making the team over Wetchen. But at any rate, that's a nice throw. That's a good NFL throw right there.
Heidenreich was a guy I liked a lot better than where he ended up getting drafted in the 7th round. I think utilization hurt him a lot. Like, it benefited him, but also hurt him because he wasn't a typical back. So it was kind of this tweener. Where is his true position? I wanted him a lot for the Bills because we've had this kind of rotation of running back 4s between Frank Gore Jr. and whoever the extra body we bring in every year is. This year it's been Ian Wheeler from the UFL. that just come in and they're not really anything dynamic. They don't offer much as a special teamer. And I kind of missed that. And I wanted a guy that maybe could potentially succeed Ty Johnson as that third down back. And with the ability of Heidenreich had, like you were saying, as a flanker to be able to come off the edge, like a lot of their handoffs to him were like end arounds, getting him to the perimeter, allowing him to use that athleticism in that weird, funky Navy offense that they always run every year. But he also, like you said,
they're running
receiver.
Yeah, they're running the wing T. I mean, or whatever it is, like they're single wing almost.
Yeah. And so he had all this different like versatility. He also, hard worker, was going to be a special teams player. I liked him to be a guy that maybe wasn't a starting back because he doesn't have those traits, but is going to be a guy that can stick because he's a do-it-all guy and he's a hard worker, will play teams. He's a guy that I would love to see. I think he's going to be a long-term NFL player. Is he going to stick on rosters for more than a couple of years at a time? And he was a guy that I felt like would be a good investment for the Bills that they went with him, but.
Well, I could see him being a third. I mean, first of all, yeah, without it being a perfect career trajectory scenario for him, I could still see him being a third down back that, like you used to think about those guys that like New England had for a while that were not really traditional running back types, but who were there. That's who they would have on the field in passing situations. And, I feel like that's a perfect fit for him. Oh, his first outside run of the year. Congratulations. It's a touchdown. Like what? I just mystifying, like what on earth? But yeah, I think I was really sort of on the fence about whether I wanted them to keep Eli on the 53, but I was really on the fence as to whether he would get that shot. But tonight convinces me, just seeing him work as the personal protector on punt, which is a big step, and then getting a few more successful opportunities on offense. By the way, we've been talking about Max Ianacre on the problems that he's had, but he looked pretty good there out in front of that sweep.
Well, that's always been his big thing, right? Ianacre. What was it? Ianacre.
Ianacre.
No, it was Anchor was the last part of it, right? Ianacre. Yeah.
It's a poor guy. It'll take, he's going to have to make like a Pro Bowl at least before people pronounce his name.
Craig was close. He said Ianacre. It was Ianacre. Ianacre, that's what it was.
But how do you see that and say it's core? It's short.
Well, that's what he said it was.
CH, don't forget, in most of the world, CH is hard. It's like Chianti in Italy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was always his thing, was being able to get into space and throw his body around and being a big guy who's also an athlete.
We need Randall here. His mother was an English teacher.
There you go. Yeah,
Please.
Exactly. I'm usually pretty on the pronunciations. I got to be honest with you. I'm off my game. Because like I'm from Pittsburgh, names don't sway me. I've seen them all. Justin Strelzik, I went to high school with Mary Machasik, and there were more J's and C's and Z's in her name than you could possibly imagine. Haven't thought about her in 50 years.
Did they have lights when you went to high school, Will?
Was that? Did
they have lights? Did they have lights in your high school?
No.
Or was it oil lamps?
It was
was it a log cabin?
They only had lights on the sundials. It's a commercial, Jim. What position group would you like to talk about next?
Why don't we do corners? Will, what corners did you have making the Bills?
Let's see. Oh, wow, on the Steelers right now. The Bills corners, I have Christian Benford, of course, Hairston, D. Alford, as you said, brought in. I like Igbinosun. I actually liked him a lot before the draft. Jordan Hancock maybe would be a fringe guy, but I think he's going to make it. And Kenny Walker, I think, has won that battle against a guy that I really liked, which was Pride. But I for some reason, I feel like Pride is one of those guys that played better earlier in his career, and the longer it's gone on, the worse it's gotten for him.
Yeah. And I think Hancock not playing today tells me he's making the 53.
Well, he was starting at slot the first game. They was starting at free safety the second game. He was all over the joint practices of Cleveland. I think they really like him. I'm a big Hancock guy. I was a big Hancock guy before his drafts class. So I'm happy to see that. I think he's going to be solidified as probably the primary backup to the slot behind D. Alford, and then also maybe a rotational starter or a rotational guy first in at safety, making that kind of question between Geno Stone and DeMar Hamlin more of who makes the roster as opposed to which one of them gets a jersey on game day. I think one of them is not even going to make it.
Yeah, so
Corner
Bill,
for the
I think they
Steelers was
aced
weird.
that. Yeah.
I think the Bills' corners are pretty straightforward. I like Kanai Walker over Toriano Pride just because he's shown more. The Steelers, when I was doing Steelers corners, it was weird. I had originally had Joey Porter down as like start the year on IR. I didn't know what the actual issue was with his
Yeah,
injury.
he's not hurt. I don't think he's actually hurt.
But I have him obviously with Jamel Dean brought in free agency we talked about earlier. Jalen Ramsey, Dalen Everett as a slot type guy, Asante Samuel Jr., who I was surprised to see was even on the roster. I didn't even realize he was still in the league. And then Brandon Eccles as another guy that can be kind of a all over the field slot type player. I don't know if that was your guys is as chalk as the Bills is, but that's what I saw looking at it.
I think at this point it is. Like I said, Slaughter has shown well, and if for some reason Porter holds out or doesn't start the season, he would be maybe the next guy up. But actually, Asante Samuel's played really well for the Steelers. He signed with them last year midseason, and they re-signed him. He was on an expiring deal, and they re-signed him to come back. And I feel like he was a nice, number 4, number 5 for them last year, and played, I think, a little bit better than he had earlier in his career. So that was a good setup. Dalen Everett, I had some real question marks about him because playing primarily in zone coverage, when he played in zone coverage at Georgia, he gave up. I lost track. It was like something like 7 or 8 blown coverages that I saw on his tape that just really scared me off of him a little bit. But they have more or less asked him to play man, and he's done great at it in this preseason. So I do think he's a lock. Those guys are locks to make it.
And what you guys are, one of the things, like when we were talking about what we're going to cover with the show, is if Will can look at the Bills roster and do a decent 53 player projection, and Owen could do the same thing for the Steelers roster, it's, there's 40 chalk picks. You got to think about 8 of them.
Right.
And then there's 5 at the end that would be questionable.
But, I think that's the way it is on every team, honestly.
Yep.
Or maybe teams that are, bad, new coaches, a lot of turnover might be slightly different than that. But I think for the most part, it's, mostly chalk, couple of question marks, and then a couple, maybe you have a wild hair of like this one guy that no one thinks is going to make it, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I'm so glad I didn't get asked to do a prediction for like the Arizona Cardinals 53. Like, God forbid.
Different, right? And I mean, there's some guys that I might pick because I just feel like they have more upside than the guys that are going to make the 53 ahead of them, who I don't necessarily think to me, just to cut to the chase, I would say actually there's, the offensive line for the Bills. Yeah. In the interior there, they got a lot of guys. So somebody good is not going to make it. But to me, the real battle is that linebacker inside, off-ball linebacker situation for Buffalo. I feel like has as much intrigue as anything because it's the sort of Keontae Jenkins or Andreessen or both. Like that's really the question to me. How do you guys feel about that?
I like Andreessen. I like his skill set for this defense, and I haven't clocked if he's been in the game much to this point. But
I saw him a lot last week and none tonight.
Yeah, I haven't seen him at all so far this game. He was a guy I actually played against him in high school a little bit because he was at Lancaster High School, and we went and did 7-on-7. So they were in a tier above us with population size, so we never actually played them in a game, but we would play against them in 7-on-7 tournaments and things like that. And we graduated the same year, so we played against him. He was always a stud at that point, and he's a Buffalo guy through and through, and it's a great story, but he's also kind of a leadership role when it comes to like depth players, great special teams player.
One of my favorite prospects, by the way, as you maybe remember, I think we first connected about this.
Well, I remember you took him and drafted a team. Like I'm Will, you were among the first people I heard ever talking about Andreessen in the draft space.
Yeah.
He's a fun player, and I think he came in as a good story and made the team by showing out specifically against the Steelers in the preseason last year. No, not much went well in that game, but he looked awesome, and I think that's what really solidified him as being on the roster. Another Skylar Bell catch, by the way. In this preseason game here, he's playing deep into the third, which I'm sure is just getting him reps because he didn't play the other 2 games. But to go back to Andreessen, once he made the team, he was getting a jersey on game days consistently as a special teams guy. So even if Keontae Jenkins maybe is a bit of a better athlete to play on the defense, I think Andreessen as a special teamer kind of sets him above that when it comes to making this roster for me.
So by the way, the
nice.
Steelers have
Almost untouched.
The Steelers have a couple of guys in on defense right now who are going to make the team, and that was not a particularly good. Well, Slaughter fell down. That's part of the reason. Yeah. But yeah, they got Spears Jennings in the game, who's probably going to be their number 3 or number 4 safety. And the way the injury situation is at safety, he might be starting week 1, but he came from the other side of the field. That wasn't his play. But anyway, to me, I when I watch a guy like Jenkins, I feel like he's the kind of linebacker that a lot of people like. That is, I see more of the flaws in his game. I think he's a kind of slow reaction for a linebacker. To me, I'd rather have a guy whose instincts are amazing and their vision for getting to the football is amazing versus an amazing athlete who is half a step slow to react. I just feel like in the history of the league, the number of guys who were successful with instincts that are sort of lagging behind at that position is pretty short, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my.
You can be faster. You can make up for a lack of speed, especially at linebacker, if your brain is a step faster. And like when I was doing the scouting stuff for UB, there was a lot of talk about, we're at MAC level school. We're not able to get these stud guys. You see a dude who's flying around the field making these crazy plays. Like there was a dude who was, got on our radar because we had a coach going down to Maryland, and he was a 6'5" linebacker, 220, and was just absolutely flying around the field. But he had no offers yet because no one had really seen him because he had been hurt early in the season. And we watched his tape, and we were like, he doesn't have offers. We just saw this. There's no way the other teams haven't signed him yet. They just haven't called him. So we're not getting him. Get him out of our list where we'll move on to the next guy. We were always looking for those players that there was no wasted. You were looking at their footwork. There's no wasted steps shuffling side to side. They're coming downhill when it's a run. They're dropping back and it's a pass. You're watching their flow and their instincts more so than their true athletic traits.
Yeah.
You wanted violence in their hands and good instincts, and that was what made them play. Those are always going to be guys who play at D1 levels, regardless of level of competition. So I think Andreessen's a player that he had decent enough athleticism. He tested well, had a good RAS score, but is also just an instinctual player. Maybe isn't an elite player because he doesn't have some of those elite traits, but will always be a rosterable player because of his instincts, his intelligence, and ability to do the dirty work, whether it's special teams or being just kind of a team player in that way.
Well, if he had to come into a game, you're not going to feel a drop off in play. He might not be able to sustain that for a long time or as long a time as a better player. But yeah, I feel like he's a guy that can come in. If the guy ahead of him gets injured and he has to come in the game when it matters, you're not going to feel scared of the ball coming towards him. It's like some guys come in from your special teams and your backups, and you're just like, oh man, I don't want to see that guy. The Steelers had a backup linebacker who was Tyler Matakevich, who was made the team every year for special teams, who literally I probably gave up 5 or 6 touchdowns in a goal line defense. They would bring him in as an extra linebacker in goal line, and he would, not be able to, just get faked out on a pass play or a play action or get run over. It was just like, okay, no more scrimmage snaps for that guy.
He had a good 2 or 3 year run in Buffalo as a special teams player.
Yeah. You just don't want to see him take snaps. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's like us right now with Sam Franklin at safety. He's a stud, absolute stud, gunner, kick coverage player. Mm-hmm. He's probably playing right now at safety, but if you got him in at safety, I'm not excited to see him taking snaps on the field. He played in that Jags game where Jordan Hancock got thrown at strong safety, then he got thrown out there, and there was just no answer. They ended up having to start Darnell Savage against the Broncos because of the injuries, but he was out there and they let up a big catch to Parker Washington. It's what kept that game kind of close. Was Jordan Porter getting hurt, and you just didn't one of those guys that he's going to make the team because he's an ace special teamer. They just give him a 2 or 3 year extension, but you don't want to see him on a defensive rep.
I don't feel like good teams have special teamers who are on the come rather than career special teamers who don't give you much upside doing anything else like that. That's the difference between really deep roster. I personally think that's the place to put a guy that's young and eager and wants to show that he can make plays.
Jordan Hancock.
There you go. There's always you right away, you remember the guys on your team who can do that. Yeah, this is okay. That was a better showing for Max there. getting his feet wet now.
You see, and your game feed is already ahead of mine. They're still talking to a coach on mine.
That's Spencer Brown, Jim.
remember,
excuse me,
remember,
Spencer Brown, thank you.
remember Spencer Brown, Jim. He plays for your team. I'm just letting you know.
He was talking to somebody in street clothes.
Yeah,
Man, that is a massive coach. If that's a coach.
Yes.
I personally think Allar has been playing relatively well this game. There was one bad throw in that red zone before the Heidenreich touchdown, but I meant to bring it up that the receiver was supposed to do an in cut and got rerouted by Kindle there, and I wouldn't totally put the blame on that because it was an inside throw that was to nobody. Kindle it was all Kindle, but when they showed the replay, the receiver got jammed on his brake and just stopped running. So I was the only one that looked egregiously ugly. But like for me, I'm looking at Allar and I'm like, I haven't seen him make any blatant mistakes. He's made some plays.
I think he's a good fit for this team because he and Aaron Rodgers are the same situation. If the pocket's clean and the play goes as planned, he's going to be able to make some plays for you. Allar may be a bit more capable of extending plays, but it's when the pocket's dirty and guys are in his face and the pressure is really ramped up that I need to see something that's different, right? I mean, that's the piece that's missing for him, is what we won't really know until preseason is not going to tell us that. But when guys
returning this punt,
my guess is going to be McCole Hardman again. I think Ray Davis took that other return, kind of solidified that they're ready to go back to him. If this is McCole Hardman, I think this is telling that it's Ray Davis is this punt returner.
It's funny. We're trying to read the tea leaves. I'm looking to see who the personal protector is, and you're looking to see who's coming back as a returner. No, it is definitely tea leaves.
I'm having a lot of fun doing this show. Like we're bouncing around from topic to topic. We're actually at Draft Professor. We're going to be doing this every Saturday night.
Oh, great! I hope that you have it better with your Buffalo feed, but our Pittsburgh feed for years, the preseason local coverage team are just unlistenable. Like it's just so hard. They don't talk about any of the players. They don't even know half the players that are playing. Their ability to not just cliche through the games is really limited. So this is way more interesting for me.
This podcast was inspired because I was watching a preseason game. I don't remember which teams. And I'm like, they don't even know all the players or the roster situations. No. I'm like, okay. Owen and I have a podcast tonight anyway, right? This is our normal night to podcast.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate you stopping by.
The Bills feed recently for this preseason has all been, they'll bring in Mitch Morse has been back in there as like a media kind of guy getting his feet wet there. But whenever they run out of things to talk about, it's about the new stadium, food, amenities. It's always they bring in the executive who helped design it or whatever.
That kind of stuff drives me nuts. I hate when they do that. The Senior Bowl is the worst because it's like I really just want to see these guys at the Senior Bowl like in some action, and then they're talking to some executive from Reese's or somebody who cares.
I love watching draft picks play in the preseason. Right, even if they're a 5th or a 7th round guy, sure. I like seeing them play. Oh, and have you seen Armaj Reed Adams on the field today?
Yeah, so he started at right guard next to Bruno. That's what tipped me off that he was playing center because he was standing in the huddle next to Armaj. Or Armage. Armage is the new way to pronounce it. They put out a pronunciation guide. It's Armage Reed Adams now.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's now I'm learning about pronunciations left and right on this show.
Yeah, so that's the new pronunciation because the Bills put out like a pronunciation guide for all their new guys. But he was in there early. I haven't tried to check recently. I wouldn't see a reason why they would take him out because who else would be in at guard if Fina's at center and they have like a couple, maybe Broker, but I feel like he would have been at one of the tackle spots as well. I'll have to double check next time we get the offense out there because I'm very curious to see that now.
The offense is on the field now.
I'm trying to look. I think it's Grable at right tackle. Might be Broker at left.
You guys got me now.
Your guys.
Now the feed is. Oh yeah, here we go. I was just about to say they didn't have Buffalo on the field until this very second. I'm sorry. What was your question?
Grable was one of your guys. I remember you
Absolutely.
grabbing him
Yeah.
and draft a team that year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been playing. They moved him to guard kind of at this point. What's the story?
So he's the third tackle. He's going to be their number 3
He
tackle.
is. Okay, good. Well, that's great. He should be.
So the lineup right now on offensive line is Nick Broker at left tackle, Armaj Reed Adams at left guard, Bruno Fina at center. Who's the right guard? I just saw him. Chase Lunt at right guard and Tylen Grable at right tackle. They flipped the tackles. So Grable was started at left, and I don't know who was at right, but now Broker is the left tackle. Grable's at right. Armaj is at left guard with Lunt inside at right guard.
So Broker playing tackle, had he played tackle before this season?
I believe he was in college. He was a tackle, and he was one of those guys that got drafted, was immediately drafted as a guard. But the idea was like, oh, he's going to be a guy that is going to be strictly a guard, backup kind of guy. But the fact that he can go out and kick out to tackle as they're experimenting with him right now makes it seem as though they think he could be maybe that next versatile piece out there, even though he just got cooked on that rep. But we won't talk about that.
But that was Skylar Bell right there, wasn't it?
Yes.
Skylar Bell showed very well tonight, by the way, guys, for his first action. That's encouraging.
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Oh, I didn't realize he didn't catch that. I thought he caught it.
No, that was a great play by the DB, though. The corner got his hand in there.
Yep.
So, yes, Broker just was an offensive tackle at Ole Miss prior to being drafted. He got drafted, was immediately slotted in the guard. He's been a guard for a couple different teams, the Bills, the Texans. I think him showing the ability to play out a tackle, I think, has made him a prime candidate to be a rosterable player this upcoming preseason.
By the way, Deshaun Jameson was the guy that made that play from Texas corner. Like, I think that, I'm very encouraged that the depth for the Steelers hasn't been as bad as it has in some years. So I feel like it's, when I said earlier, I was joking that they think they're a contender, but I'm not really sure about that. One of the areas that I think, if I'm looking at teams and thinking, are they really a contender? It's their depth is a big part of that. Because as you said, Jim, you need a lot of guys. You never know like what the weakest link on your defense is the guy that's most important, really, because however strong your weakest link is, because otherwise it only takes one breakdown. Same with the running game on offense. All it takes is one guy that can't block or misses a block or misses the hole that they're supposed to run into, and you have a completely dysfunctional play. So I think this it's the thing I like to take out of the preseason is getting a feel for like where the real quality depth is. And, so a lot of times you get to this second half of the last week of preseason and it's a lot of guys that you're like, yeah, the problem is, in the famous words of Chuck Noll, the problem isn't cutting. The problem is the stopping. So
what if you had to pick Will? Because like I have my answer, and I personally think it's quarterback. I think there's a ceiling on this team because of Aaron Rodgers as their starting quarterback, and they're kind of tying their wagon to that. But if you had to pick the reason whether or not this team would be a contender or not, what is your like number one reason as to what would dictate that for this upcoming season for the Steelers?
Too many question marks in the middle of the field coverage on defense. It's always been a weakness for this team since Ryan Shazier got hurt in 2017. And their preference is for linebackers who are more show than actual performance in terms of being able to cover the middle of the field. And to add to that the safety situation is really in flux. They added a bunch of new guys. I like Deshaun Elliott, although he's coming off an injury and they don't really have a free safety. So those issues on defense are real. The offensive line, I think they have players and they have prospects there, but they've really been stunted by poor offensive line coaching, poor offensive scheming in previous years. So I think they're maybe a year away from the offensive line being dependable enough. And so you have this combination of like an offensive line that's not protecting the greatest, wide receiver room that isn't exactly the deepest, and an older quarterback that frankly was only good against poor teams last year. Those are all ceilings, right? So, But do they have a high enough floor that they're not going to be in the top 10 of the draft? Most certainly. But, all it would take would be an injury to Rodgers and, another offensive lineman, and they would be in trouble.
You may not want to see the draft order. I have a draft professor right now. I have Pittsburgh in the top 10.
I think he'd love that, if anything.
I'm all for it. Yeah. Like I want to, remains to be seen who actually will come out of this quarterback class, but I think you have a shot. Even picking the third quarterback off the board could be better than anybody that we've had in years. So I'm very excited about this possibility.
If the option is Lenore, Sellers, or no quarterback, what are you taking?
Oh, I would take Sellers. I don't know if I want to overpay for him. We'll see where his draft capital is, when the year's winding down. But I have a feeling that there'll be a guy like Mestamaker or trying to think of someone else that I feel like is not going to be the first or second guy taken, but who I would totally be into.
Dante Moore, Darian Mensah, Arch Manning.
Same.
Yeah, like Mensah, I'm happy to go to the podium and pick him. What's the is the NC State guy? Is he actually draft eligible?
CJ. Oh,
sorry,
I haven't done quarterbacks.
He is.
Yeah, because that would be another one. I think there's going to be literally a handful of guys who won't be QB1 or QB2. There's going to be three guys available at pick 15 or trading up from 20 or 15 to move up that are going to be potential franchise guys that you'll be thrilled to get. So I feel like it's going to be that kind of quarterback draft, even if Arch doesn't come out. If Arch comes out, then, Arch is going number one just based on the possibility that he might be as good as the other Mannings. So whether he deserves that or not, he's going to use up one of those quarterback slots. And as far as I'm concerned, that just moves guys like Mensah or Mestamaker further down. Mestamaker's another one. Like maybe if they don't win, if he doesn't win some kind of a championship, be it, the Big 12 or what gets into the playoffs or whatever his goal is, he probably comes back as well. But I'm very high on Drew Mestamaker. So
CJ Bailey is the NC State quarterback.
Oh yeah, there you go.
It's a junior.
Yeah, I think like it's going to depend on what his season looks like, but he has a chance to take the step into being talked about in that first couple of guys picked, I think.
Have you looked at Walker Eget from Duke yet?
Yeah, I saw him a lot at San Jose State. I liked two of the wide receiving targets that he had during his time there. Another guy that this year's a real sort of pivotal year for him. I think he's got a lot of talent. It's just the mistakes, He doesn't have Taylor Green talent, but when people were saying about Taylor Green before last year was basically if he could clean up the mistakes with what his other skills are, then he'd be a first round pick. And his season didn't go like that for a variety of reasons, that some of which were his doing and some weren't. So I feel, similar about Egan. I could see him having a very good season and people talking about him in round 2.
Was Egan the quarterback when Nick Nash was the wide receiver at San Jose State?
I believe so, yeah. And the guy before that was like a bigger wide receiver who I also really was high on. I can't remember his name right now, but yeah, so Egan is like a guy that's been on my radar for a while.
Yeah, we did an Oklahoma State preview on the Draft Professor a week or two ago. So for me, during my time at UB, the guy who ended up being my director of player personnel was at North Texas last year as like their director of player personnel or director of scouting, something like that, who is now at Oklahoma State with all the other North Texas people.
Yeah. So
I'm connected with some guys there, and we went and covered it because I was more familiar with their front office, and I was like, okay, let me get into. I watched a lot of North Texas because I wanted to kind of support them from afar with my viewing. So I
covered it with Dylan.
Yes, I covered it with Dylan. Yes, and I had never watched Mestamaker or
Hawkins,
the receiver.
The receiver, but Hawkins.
Yeah,
Hawkins might be the best running back in football right now.
Yeah, Hawkins is insane. But I was looking at specifically the draft eligible guys. What's the receiver's name? The white dude.
Yeah, that's another one that they brought receivers with them that are really, really tremendous. Yeah.
Oh, I've
I'm
got.
gonna have to
Hold on,
look
I've got
myself.
my sheet up. I just have to open up the. I just have to open up a different tab. So you're looking for the wide receiver in Oklahoma State?
Yeah, transfer from North Texas, was a stud at last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know who you're. I know who you're talking about.
I know. I also
What
know
is
who you're
it?
talking about, but I can't remember the name.
He was awesome.
Yeah, this. I mean, this for me. This. We're seeing more of a mixing in guys now that are not. That are not going to be on the roster in a couple days.
Yeah, Jimmy Charlo's out there for linebacker for the Bills. Like that's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't have as
Wyatt Young.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Wyatt Young. Yes.
Yep. No, and they also have a younger guy that came who's the speedster, I think, from North Texas that also transferred.
They had a big body guy from. I mean, they had like 80 guys transfer from North Texas from last year,
Yeah.
but they have a bigger body guy too from a different school. He was one of the guys who didn't come from North Texas.
Listen,
wide
I think
receiver.
Eric Morris is like the next Signetti. I mean, I feel like it wouldn't shock me at all if they came. I mean, I think they have a shot to win that conference. The team was not that good last year, but I think they're made some significant upgrades, to be honest. TCU is a little bit of a mess. They got some stuff going on there. So what is it? It's Utah is the favorite at this point. I like
Utah, Texas Tech.
Yeah, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech may need a quarterback though.
They positively do because they brought in the guy that's terrible. So I'm looking. I feel better and better about my prediction that Oklahoma State was going to win that. They're a playoff team. They were they'll be an out of nowhere playoff team in my opinion, and I think you're in years to come. Like if he can get another quarterback, I think that dude can coach.
Justin Bowick was the other wide receiver on Oklahoma State who was another transfer. He transferred up from Ball State. He's kind of a bigger body. He was originally recruited to a P4 school and then moved down to Ball State. 6'3", 6'4", big bodied guy. He's kind of on the slower, but he's gonna complement Wyatt a lot more just because Wyatt's more of a run after catch slot-esque body, whereas Bowick's gonna be the big outside X guy.
I think Mestermaker can elevate. He's good enough to be able to elevate guys. So, and the system I think works well for them. But you got a real stud running back, that's for sure. My feed just cut away in the middle of action to a commercial for flag football, which I always really appreciate about preseason.
Well, it's a punt that was fair caught by Buffalo at the 9.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it.
Is DJ Lagway going to be in this draft class? He's got to be due to be out of
eligibility. I think he's out of eligibility after this year. Yeah.
No, he still has another year.
Really? Oh my God! How do they do it?
When we covered him over the summer, the question was, okay, who are the 3 best quarterbacks for 28? And it's Lagway, JKS, and Carr.
Yeah, or Mestamaker. Mestamaker.
And then maybe Sellers or Mestamaker makes that conversation, but Mestamaker might be 2029, right?
Yeah, he's a redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, he's eligible this year, but he is, and I don't know that he's coming out, but there've been sort of like some talk that he might. I think the guy that's intriguing to me is Josh Hoover. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but I love the situation he's going into. How could
that's
you?
Jim's
not?
Guy.
Yeah. So I would be surprised if his profile isn't raised a lot. I wish he were, an inch taller and 15 pounds heavier, because then I think people would be talking about him.
A fun story the director of player personnel I was talking about, who I worked under, who's now at Oklahoma State. His name is Wes Drake, if you're curious who he is, but he was doing like a scouting school for a lot of the guys who were, a lot of the other dudes who came in as interns. It was an open position for like some of the students at UB who wanted to come in and just help out with the team. So they didn't really know what they were doing. So they had to do like a scouting school type thing.
Yep.
And he basically ran it about how he did, because he was a big basketball guy. And he had to learn how to scout guys from his time at Houston. He originally was from Texas, was at Houston, then at TCU, then ended up coming to was a high level guy at Northwestern for like 6 months before being hired at UB. He was telling us that the first time he was asked to watch quarterbacks, the guy at Houston was like, "Hey, here's some quarterbacks. I'm not going to tell you who these guys are. You're going to watch these 2 quarterbacks. You're going to come back and tell me who you like better." And he came back and told me this guy he was like, "Oh, I like this guy better. He looks better for us." And he ended up being the guy that Houston recruited. That guy was one dude. I don't remember what his name was. The other guy was DJ Lagway, who was like the number 1 recruit at the time. And he was like, yeah, I like the other guy better. And he was like, so this is why you're wrong, because this is DJ Lagway. He's the number 1 recruit in the country. And he was like, okay, that was how I learned. So don't be afraid. It was kind of a lesson of don't be afraid to be wrong. So see what you see, and then we'll work on it. But that was a fun story. I always enjoyed listening.
Although sometimes the scouts are wrong too, man. Cam Ward is a perfect example of like a player that coming out of high school that nobody. I mean, if you had put him up against whoever was drafted first out of that high school recruiting class, I think they might have felt differently about it 5 years later. So
yeah, I mean, Cam Ward was a crazy situation because his high school team was like they ran the triple option. He threw 50 passes the whole season, so it was like, all right, cool. Then
I remember the story when he was a freshman, but it's like he went straight as he was freshman of the year and was amazing that season. I watched every game of that year. I don't know if you recall, it was a COVID season, spring season, and that conference. It's not the Southeastern. What is the name of that conference that they're in?
Is that the Sun Belt?
The Southland. So ESPN made a deal. They had every game of the Southland Conference on ESPN that year. And so I having nothing else to do in the shutdown, I watched every game of that conference that year, which is how I got to meet Corey Karbowski, my co-host, because he was the long snapper for Southeast Louisiana, and I liked Cole Kelly, who was the quarterback there. Yep. And his, that's the connection was made. But yeah, so I watched every snap of Cam Ward of his entire career, basically, starting with that year. So at any rate, yeah, I've heard that story many times about the running quarterback thing, but I feel like there's, it's hard to believe that this is true, but I think it really does hold water. I've been saying for years that how they rate you as a high school recruit coming out into college is pretty much that sticks with you for a long time. You have to severely outplay that in college or severely underperform in college from that kind of ranking or rating in order for you to be seen differently by the time it comes to the draft. Because you see a lot of guys in the draft, you're like, why is this guy so low in the draft? He seems to be so undervalued. And the answer comes down to, well, he was a 0-star or 1-star recruit. And it's taken him a long time to, break out of that sort of point of view. So that's the only thing I would say to your friend who's the scout. Yeah, most of the time people are looking for certain things in scouting, but quarterbacks are weird. People don't scout quarterbacks right.
We have a perfect example in this draft class because we're talking about, Lagway hasn't really done much in college. Last year was his first year of true starting, and he didn't look amazing, but he's still being talked about as is he going to be potentially, this high up, first round draft pick at quarterback when he hasn't really proved much because he was the number 1 recruit. Whereas Mestamaker was a walk-on, didn't even start in high school, walked on North Texas, redshirted 1 year, and then his first year starting was a stud in North Texas. Now he's a starting quarterback for Oklahoma State, who we're projecting to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so if you take Lenora Sellers or DJ Lagway, right, they're both 5-star.
I would take Sellers. I don't believe.
Me too.
I don't believe that this sort of dip. He was so good earlier. I think there's just stuff that you don't even know behind the scenes or what's around him going on that really detracted from what's happened to him like last year. But I think that there's tons of upside with him. I don't see it with Lagway. Lagway feels more mechanical to me.
Okay, and Lagway is now at Baylor, if memory serves me correctly, right?
Yeah.
He transferred out of Florida? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I think the rats were jumping off the ship.
Well,
I don't know.
Pittsburgh had Buffalo pinned back there. That was a good defensive stand there by Pittsburgh.
Yeah, coverage. It was really a coverage sack there. They didn't really had him running around for not a coverage. I think he got rid of it in the end. No, it was a sack. He was down there. But yeah, it feels like there was nowhere to go with the football. But I don't know. What do you guys think of Michelle? Do you think he's got some future with the Bills that they should, sign him to practice squad? Is he one of the best, 96 quarterbacks in the league?
He's been on our practice squad for the last 2 years. I don't see any reason why this third year would be any different.
Yeah.
Every time they bring a quarterback in, it's never a question of
Ooh,
Tommy Doman.
housed it.
Uh,
Who is that returner, Will?
Wetchen.
My feed is lagging, so I can't tell you.
Number 10.
Oh, that's Wetchen.
He just took one to the house.
Yeah, well, there's his moment he needed. Tommy Doman is a really, really good punter, and this is not a good choice to punt out of your end zone on a short field to Wetchen. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
they missed like 4 tackles. Doesn't help that they broke loss contain with their third string special teams group.
Yep.
But to talk about Buechele, the quarterbacks for the Bills, since Josh Allen's been the entrenched starter and there's been no question about it, it's always been who best helps Josh in that quarterback room, not who's going to come in and help. Like Mitch Trubisky's been the best backup we've had. It's been like Matt Barkley, Case Keenum, Mitch Trubisky, just guys who are going to come in and help get Josh prepped and ready to go for the next week. Never a question of who's going to be a guy that you can come in and rely on for 5-6 starts in the season.
Yeah, nobody is coming in and keeping the ship going like Josh Allen for more than a game. You know?
Buechele has been a guy that has lacked even the talent of those other guys to be a true backup quarterback, but has been a guy that Josh has really liked to have in the room. So he's been consistently their third string quarterback for at least I think this is going to be his 3rd or 4th season with the Bills. And he got signed away to the Chiefs last year, went to play a game or two at the end of the season, and he immediately came back to the Bills on a futures contract right after it was done. So they're big fans of him. He enjoys it being here. If anyone's going to be like a future, because we had Davis Webb as the 3rd quarterback before that. They kind of have been getting these like future coach level quarterbacks who aren't really good quarterbacks, but are good minds to be in that practice squad spot for them.
Yeah. I mean, they have a different need. I mean, it isn't always about the best 64 quarterbacks in the world, because I think it's clear that the NFL the 64 guys who are on NFL rosters or practice squads are not probably the 64 best quarterbacks on the planet, but they fit a scheme. They know the offense. So even if I don't get any reps, I can come in and call plays because I know this backwards and forwards because I've been with this coach before or whatever. Right. Because I think you see guys, I mean, this is the issue I have with the UFL is it's not really a developmental league. It's not like if you do well there, you'll get a shot and you can move into making a roster or a practice squad. Because if it were, I think there have been guys who have played pretty well at quarterback in that league, or we've even shown in preseason that they were worth, making it to a practice squad that haven't really panned out. So, yeah, it's another sort of flaw in the system.
Well, my opinion for the UFL to be developmental, they need to finish their season when the NFL is signing players to a futures deal, right? So at the time the UFL season finishes, if I had to guess, Buffalo was at 87 players.
Yeah.
They may have already been at 90.
Yep.
Right. And you've made financial commitments to these players or whatever. They've done a mini camp, right? Because if you were in the UFL, you missed the NFL mini camps. Right. Yep. That's so
yeah.
It can be developmental, but it's all about when your season ends relative to when the NFL teams are building their new roster.
Yeah. And they're already not really getting so much attendance money or anything like that. I sort of feel like it should, if it operated more like a minor league. So when guys get cut from camp, they go to a minor league franchise. So let's say that 3 teams share a franchise, or 2 teams share a franchise of minor leagues. The NFL supports it. And so there are guys there that are not going to get reps on your team that you want them to play. It's like, think about the way the NHL works with players in the minor leagues and how they bring them up and down for certain players to get them action, but they don't want to use up their options too much, so they send them back down. This kind of action. If the NFL had that going, I think they'd have a shot at developing some guys, like particularly offensive line and quarterbacks. They got no shot. If you're the 3rd string guy, you get barely any reps unless someone gets hurt, and you're just not really going to get better. So why not be like Buffalo and have a 3rd string guy that you think is almost like a coach in the room that benefits you more than a guy you think has upside to become a starter in the future?
Well, Owen's a huge proponent of Buffalo spending a draft pick on a quarterback and
Please, God.
putting that person on the 53.
For this exact reason, right? So we were just talking about how, Shane Buechele as a potential third string quarterback on the practice squad, he's more similar with Davis Webb, who's now like an offensive, he's going to be a head coach. Like he's a hot coaching prospect 2-3 years after retiring from playing football after being with the Bills. Shane Buechele, I don't know if he's that level, but he's another guy who's like more coached than true quarterback to start in the NFL. He got his chance last year. He's not really, physically talented enough. The Bills have consistently had two of those guys, though, whether it was Mitch Trubisky has been the most physically talented guy they've had as a backup since Josh Allen's been here. You could tell me that they had a Shane Buechele or another one of those guys that's kind of like all mind, no real physical capabilities. Be the practice squad guy and have him be the guy who's helping Josh Allen in the practice room or whatever like that with another Mike White or whatever. And then have a developmental, a Drew Aller or Taylor Green. Give me somebody who can do something.
I feel like that's every team should have, a developmental quarterback either at the number 2 or the number 3, or as you said, practice squad. Like you should always have someone that has upside to become not just a reasonable starter, but like a plus starter, right? There's just no reason to not allocate your resources to that. But I think if you looked at rosters, you'd be surprised at how many teams don't really have that going. And it's like, okay, if you're a serious contender, you're like, we're Super Bowl or bust this year. So we got to have a number 2 that we can really count on. So we have a guy that, that has 50 or 60 or 70 NFL starts, who is our backup. And, so our number 3, it's still in that situation, I think should still be a prospect. Like maybe you don't need a guy that can play right away, but you could get a Taylor Green or something, right? Next year's the year to do that, because if you're Buffalo, I think you can absolutely 100% without even knowing who's coming out and who isn't next year, you could get a quarterback in the second or third round next year that would be worth rostering. I mean, that it just feels like that kind of year, like closer to an 83 sort of year.
Either Jim or the chat, because I know we do have a decent amount of Bills fans in the chat. Can you tell me who the last quarterback the Buffalo Bills drafted was? Just period. It wasn't Josh Allen.
Fromm.
Do you know what round that was?
It was 6 or 7, I thought.
It was the 5th round. It was the same draft as like Jacob Eason. They drafted a dude, and the guy they chose was the low upside, like mental over physical quarterback. Even when they draft a guy, they take a guy that you're not excited to be your backup quarterback.
Right. I think
hold on. That's good. But this is revisionist history, because Fromm was drafted entering Josh Allen's 3rd year. Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen yet. That's a GM. Sure. That's a GM saying, I don't know if I have my quarterback and I need to keep my job.
I mean, I guess, but picking a mediocre, a high floor quarterback with no ceiling, with no upside, is not a way to keep your job anyway. I mean, that's a fallacy. By the way, I'm a little worried about something. Cole Holcomb is in the game for Pittsburgh. He is. No matter who you think is going to be starting or whatever for this team, he is no worse than your number 3 linebacker, and he's in the game with 9:15 left in the 4th quarter. It's like just the prospect of maybe getting hurt would really put a damper on the season. I can't understand why he's in the game.
So maybe the Bills have Jimmy Charlo in. Like it's like if you're in at this point, like we were talking about, like maybe some guys are in that are going to be, starters or backups, or key backups still, but like at this point in the game, you're in the middle of the 4th quarter. Why would you have any guy that's going to take significant snaps for you in at this point?
The only thing I can think of is that maybe some guys are hurt and there's just not that many people that can put in the game to play.
I remember there was a year in the last preseason game. I don't remember who the quarterback was, but the quarterback for Buffalo got hurt and JP Lossman had to come in the game. And Buffalo was less than a score down, and JP Lossman was just handing the ball off because they didn't want him to get subjected to any hits because they were going to need Lossman the next week.
Yeah, absolutely not. That was a good. That was one of the good balls Bichelle has thrown tonight. That's what he's been doing well this preseason.
He's missed on that throw a couple of times, and he made that one from a more difficult situation. That was Max Tomczak, right? Yep. I actually really like Max Tomczak as a prospect. The fact that he is a Steelers, offspring, did not factor into my decision making. But yeah, I think I think that Wetchen really would have had him play his way off the roster. They seemed to be very enamored with him, and they spent a 4th round pick or whatever. So they were unlikely to cut Wetchen. And him showing on punt return tonight, I think will definitely, that pretty much locks it up for him. Heidenreich, as I said, responding to the chat right now, but yeah, Heidenreich, as I said, I already would have kept him just because of the upside, but it's been a weird preseason for him. The fact that they're continually just running him up the middle and they haven't targeted him yet with the pass makes me feel either they're just trying to work on things that he's not as good at and give him some more reps, or he's not making it. So you can make an argument either way. But yeah, he at least had some more production tonight in that role.
I'm curious if this game has actually not been that bad of a game. Like, it's 27-17. Bills are attempting to make it a 1-score game right now. Like, this is actually some entertaining ball, some actual real life, game scenarios where, 1 score, less than 6 minutes left. Can you get the ball back and go down and try to tie it? Yeah. Something like that. I think we're going to get a good end of this if they can convert here.
It just seemed to be like a lot of second stringers in the game from, I see, second stringers on both sides here and there. Uh-oh.
I definitely think for the Bills, it's a lot more guys that just haven't had a lot of action with, or at least consistent action. Like Skylar Bell still being in is definitely one of those.
I like seeing the made field goal. I'm just saying that made me happy because we've had a few questions on that. But I do want to give Dylan a shout out in the chat. So Dylan, it's great to see you here. Dylan podcasts with me a lot. He's podcasted with Owen a little bit and Will a little bit. He actually just did a fantasy football show last night. So Dylan, thank you so much for stopping by. It means the world to all of us. Great to see you here, and I'll see you on the other side of the camera sometime next week. So
I'm glad anybody's here, Jim.
We got 128 concurrent viewers. That's
I know. I was going to say that's kind of awesome. I mean, it's too bad we haven't had anything interesting to say. Yeah, I don't know.
Blame the host. Blame the host.
Well, let me ask you this for you guys. I have a thought for myself. We talked a little bit about Wetchen and Heidenreich, but in terms of bubble players for Buffalo, do you see anything? The only thing I really heard is Armaj Adams is still in the game, so read into that whatever you will. And we haven't seen 44 out there at all, so it makes me feel like if you're reading into the tea leaves, what does that tell you about Buffalo's bubble guys?
Not seeing Van Pran Granger tonight to me is suspicious.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think we touched on it a bit earlier, but I definitely think that because with the significance of amount of playing time that guys like Reed Adams who have gotten so far tonight, the fact that he didn't play at all and he was already kind of like on the outside looking in makes me think that they're trying to preserve his health to be able to move him for maybe like a 7th or a 6th round asset.
Yeah, well, centers are in. There's a couple of teams that don't have anybody at center right now, so I do think that there's a market for that. But yeah, the guard, and probably a lot easier to get a guard only guy through waivers, just because there's fewer teams that are really looking for that.
And was Austin Corbett on your 53 for Buffalo?
Yeah, I went. So for my offensive line, I ended up keeping technically 10, but I put Jude Bowery on the IR, so I kept 9 with Dawkins, Anderson, McGovern, Torrance, Brown, the starting 5. And then it's Bowery on IR, Corbett, Cushenberry, Reed Adams, and Broker.
So you have Cushenberry making it over Adams. Basically.
Oh, I just realized I don't have Grable on here.
Yeah, Cushenberry was a guy that I didn't keep that I thought Buffalo would.
he got a decent signing bonus. Jerry Ostroski has been like he points that out. Like, why do you give somebody so much guaranteed money if you're putting them on the roster bubble?
Yeah.
All right, I just now made an adjustment where I've removed Reed Adams from the roster and put in Talon Grable because I didn't have Grable on. He's obviously making it. I think the question becomes Reed Adams versus Broker. And Reed Adams has played really well, but he is a guard-only guy.
Yep.
And while they invested a 7th-round draft pick in him, I think the fact that Broker has played both left and right tackle this game, has played guard for them in the past, and they're lacking any kind of depth because Jude Bowery has not shown anything this preseason, and he's hurt. They need a tackle guy. And outside of Grable, the only other backup tackle is Bowery, who was hurt. Like they literally don't have another guy who can play tackle outside of Grable. So I think Broker makes it over Reed Adams just off the strength of him being able to play some kind of tackle.
Yeah, I feel like if you're guard only, you have to be good enough to be a starter. Like it's a tough road to be guard only and try to make a team as a backup because it's hard to dress you on game day. That's the biggest issue, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
the job of a backup, you got to have some versatility card to play. You know, even if he could take snaps at center, have a better chance of making a roster. But you know, like I said, pretty good as a guard, but that is something to think about when you're ranking prospects is their ability to make a team. If they're not versatile and they don't play special teams, well, they better be good enough to be a starter out of the box.
I think if it isn't Fina, that we talked about earlier, Bruno Fina, if Reed Adams can make it back to the practice squad, he'd be my betting favorite to be that long-term developmental guy that ends up being like the 6th offensive line, the future Alec Anderson for the team. I think would be Reed Adams if he can make it to the practice squad.
Yeah.
What was Corbett's contract? Was it a 1 year or was it a multi-year?
It was 1 year, similar to Cushenberry's, but with less guarantees because he has injury history. But he's also flexible between guard and center, whereas Cushenberry is strictly a center.
Do you see any world where it's Reed Adams over Corbett?
I could definitely see it because I think he's a player that, while yes, he was in competition for guard or the starting left guard spot, and can play some center. The fact is he'd probably be the 3rd string center if you'd have to let McGovern and Cushenberry get hurt for him to ever take snaps at center. So the flexibility there doesn't really help him as much. And I think they just want to do right by the player in that case, where they would release him like, hey, you didn't win our starting job. That's fine. Here, go try to find a spot where you can maybe start sometime this season. I can definitely see Corbett getting released, specifically trying to maybe help him out, similar to what they did with Kendrick Green last year.
Let me ask you this: are the Bills a team that has a kind of more traditional left guard type and right guard type? Do they have like a mover at left guard and a mauler at right?
They did previously. So David Edwards was the left guard previously, and he was a converted quarterback, more of an athletic guy, with O'Cyrus Torrence being a right guard, more of a heavy foot mauler type. Alec Anderson is more athletic than O'Cyrus Torrence, which I guess isn't saying much because O'Cyrus Torrence isn't like the greatest athlete in the world, but he's definitely, at least temperament-wise, also kind of a mauler type. So they went kind of redundant with the left guard this year in Alec Anderson. However, I do think that they have in the past traditionally been more athletic at left guard than right guard. Because before that, McGovern was left guard.
Yeah. That's an interesting series. Like, I think if you're trying to learn something about, because to me, it's like our only chance really to see these young quarterbacks is in extended looks in preseason like this. And, it's a game that doesn't mean anything, but I think I want to know that my rookie quarterback can learn some lessons about situational football. But I didn't realize that where they are on the field, they were going to go for it on 4th down. So that previous play call was not as much of a give up play as I thought it was. Because I feel like they did everything right. They ran the clock down, they did stuff, and he's trying to make a play. I think there's Heidenreich finally getting his target and the ball's in the dirt.
I'm definitely impressed with Alar. That's not to say that I'm just saying he looks like he belongs. That
wasn't Eli Heidenreich getting his. I just saw the 20 in the round at the top. I thought that was 29, but yeah.
That's the second drop 23 has had today that Aller's hit him in the hands.
Yeah. It's, I think UPS is hiring. I mean, I'm sorry, kid. UMass Amherst, to the NFL, like you gotta show like a madman in your NFL camp to even get a shot to get another camp invite.
Kurt Warner was bagging groceries.
It's true. There's nothing wrong with it having a job. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's like it's bad luck for him if nothing else. That wasn't the greatest throw, but it's like when you come in as an underdog of underdogs, like into an NFL camp, you absolutely have to like play out of your mind to get a chance to continue, or otherwise.
So, Owen, is this the play that Josh Allen called in? Josh Allen's calling plays today.
If it's a quarterback draw, yes.
I just saw the missed out. They're about to snap the ball on 2nd and 10 for me.
So it could very well be the play he called. Oh, kid,
that didn't go too well. When that ball comes back to you, you just knock it down.
Just knock it down, especially when time's an issue in the game, and you lost yardage and the clock is running. Like bad football right there.
Well, this is your situation you want. You're in 3rd and extra long, under 3 minutes. You need a touchdown drive. Like this is extended 2-minute drive, do or die. I guess you could punt it back if you throw it.
If he had simply knocked that ball down or even gotten out of bounds, then this play, that even if he was incomplete on 3rd and 14, they could punt it. But now he's got to make a play. There we go.
Is that Pettis?
That's Pettis, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's worse than having Cole Holcomb in the game. Now they got Landon Roberts in the game, so they must really be shorthanded at the Steelers at linebacker right now, because you have your number 3 and your number 4 linebackers in the game right now. So, meaning, two guys that are like the second team linebackers.
Here's my take reading the tea leaves of this right now. I think you are more likely to see Dante Pettis make this team's practice squad than Mecole Hardman. Both fill the same role as a returner, and he just seems way more natural as a receiver, way more ability. Like that play on that 3rd and long is him finding the softest hole in that zone, making himself available for Buechele, being the same target, and making a hard play to get upfield and not, securing the catch and making the play. You don't have to make a big explosive play every time, but he's got athleticism. He can be a returner. And I think I just like him better as an overall wide receiver than I do Hardman.
I think Hardman's not the same player he was when he came out. When he came out, he was like, the fastest player in the NFL. And he never played quite to that speed. But if you got him in the open field with the ball, you could see the speed. I don't see that now. Like, I don't think he's the same threat that he was then. So that doesn't bode well for him.
Yep. I wanted to give a shout out to Joe Miller. He and I were chatting ahead of the podcast. So Joe Miller is at the game today, everybody. And he's helped Owen and I out at Overreaction quite a bit. So
nice.
Shout out to Joe. And then I got a different configuration so people can see us.
Oh, the Buffaloes. I see the Buffaloes rear end in that one. That's pretty good. Have you guys ever been? What's the closest, Jim? What's the closest you've ever been to a bison? That wasn't in the zoo.
Okay, funny story.
Boy.
Yeah, to be good. So I was in Denver last week. Right, work took me there. Girlfriend came with me.
Nice.
We flew into the airport, went straight to Garden of the Gods, which is an hour south.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was a moose. I took a picture, told everybody it's a moose. Apparently, I've never seen a deer with antlers before. It was just a deer with antlers. It wasn't a moose.
It wasn't an elk? Because they do have elk.
Yeah. I was really close to it.
Well, in Colorado, we have some, in Utah, there's a real what they call mule deer that are bigger than East Coast deer. So yeah, they look more like a horse with antlers.
It was definitely bigger. But anyway, so I ended up showing the photo to my uncle, who's a little bit more of a Denver wildlife expert than me because he lives out there. He's like, that's a deer. So then the rest of the week, he leaves something on my bed. Colorado moose.
Here's
when
a
it was
moose for
picture
you.
of a
Yeah,
deer.
exactly.
So
Nice.
yeah, I like it. I like it when people can give me a hard time like that. So, when was the last time I was close to a moose?
No,
Does
I
the
said
Rogers-
I said
a
Oh, you
bison.
said a
I said a
bison. You
bison. I'm talking about like your
I'm sorry.
mascot of your team. Yeah.
I've never seen one in the wild. I've had an experience. I mean, I've not done a lot of traveling to the Midwest or like the middle of the country at all. I've most of my travels have been either to Canada with the proximity I'm in, or along the East Coast. So my traveling experiences aren't as well documented.
By the way, that was another really good throw. Like Bushell, his, for whatever you want to say about it, it's 2 minutes left in the third preseason game. He's stepped up his game a little bit compared to where he was earlier in the night.
Dante Pettis showing up again.
Skylar Bell is still on the field.
Yeah, that would have been a touchdown if he hadn't tackled him. Yeah, the Bison thing, or the Buffalo Bills. For 6. I mean, before this, I have experience with Bison, but I have been doing work for a Oglala Lakota Family Foundation for 6 years. So they're both based in Akwesasne, New York, up at the Canadian border, and also at Pine Ridge in South Dakota. So they're very experienced with the bison. But I actually once had bison walk through. I was in a stream that was like had hot springs in the stream, but in the wild, like not in a park or anything. And we were sitting talking, and the snow's coming down. It was beautiful, and I realized that a herd of bison just walked through us. I heard this noise. I turned around, and this herd of bison walked in, and they're A, huge, and B, you really don't want to mess with them. And we were just like, just be totally still, don't say anything. And they just grazed their way through us. So I've had a very close encounter with awesome. The bison. Yeah, this feels like a good situational football for these two coaches. Like you get to see some guys trying to win the game late. Skylar Bell right there. That's gonna be replayed a few times in the film room, I would think.
Yeah,
so,
you got to get to that block if you're.
So,
Skylar
Will,
Bell.
what are your thoughts on the Steelers coaching staff, and is the team going to have a new identity?
I hated the hire because I felt what they really need to be pushed to do was to the change up. If had the same for 20 years, and they hired somebody who is very similar in terms of like the kind of the lack of modernity to his way of thinking about the NFL. So I refuse to make any to get any crazy optimism or any huge negativity until after they've played 4 NFL games this year. There you go. So now, minute 6 left in the game, they're going for 2, right? There's a 0% chance they're kicking it.
And I just found out Buffalo scored because my feed's lagging.
Oh, sorry, you were ahead of me. What happened to your feed?
All good. I'm having a good time. It really, I wouldn't be doing this if it was a game that counted.
I will say Ian Wheeler should have scored in that first handoff on the first and goal. He cut it out. He bounced it wide. If that you could see the cutback lane across the face of, I think it was Landon Roberts, had a bit of a bad angle. If that was like James Cook, that probably is a touchdown on the first carry.
Yeah.
But that was a good cut there. I think he definitely made a decision. Let's see if they can actually take the lead. I would love to see Drew Aller, minute left, down a point.
I'd like to see that too, but I almost said a little while ago that if the Steelers punt, that the Buffalo's going to win this game. Now that I didn't see all of it, but I have a feeling that was a really good route.
Whoa. Dante Pettis, my guy, showing up.
Right,
Let's go.
I want to see the whole route though, because I think, yeah.
Dante Pettis and the Bills. Oh my God, that whip route was nasty. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that's a good route.
Love my Washington guy.
Randall loves a good whip route.
Everyone should love a good whip route.
It's his S&M background.
That popped me.
Yeah, that's the
this is what happens when you're always 3 hours deep in a podcast. Yeah.
Yep. Well, you're right. So you got your wish. You get to see Drew coming down the field.
Oh, okay. I get Dante Pettis showcase in the fourth quarter, and then I get to see Drew Eller in a 1 minute drive. Try to get
the thing about Drew Aller here is he doesn't have the best cast to work with compared to his other outings that he's had. He's been playing with better players than he's out there with tonight, or was out there with. So it'll be interesting to see. And the other thing is, rookie quarterback in a no huddle hurry up situation. Yeah, it's a little easier these days because you got a coach in your ear talking to you, but it's still, that's still one of those things that's kind of the last thing you pick up in the install is trying to be able to go out there and call plays on your own.
Call your shot, Will. Who's going to make the play here?
Whoever is pass rushing against Brandon or Broderick Jones.
So,
I'm not. By the way, I would be really great if I had just seen a play, but I didn't see a play before I said that. Just so you know, yeah, Broderick Jones just feels like what we're going to see.
So
good protection.
If I were to say that there's two types of quarterbacks, a quarterback that you win because of, or a quarterback you win with, is Alar win with or win because of?
He's nothing yet. I mean, it's impossible to tell until he has a little bit more time to work on the parts of his game that are not as good. But he has the potential to be a quarterback that you win because of.
Agreed.
But I think he's either going to do that or he's going to be not a very good quarterback.
Right? He's got the boomer bust, right? Wide range of he's either going to be a win because of or not an NFL quarterback. It's not. I don't see a future where he's a quarterback at the level of you win with because he just barely makes it.
Yeah, I
was
feel
that
like
ball out or was it incomplete?
That's gonna be incomplete.
Yeah, that's a good defensive play. But I hate the idea of throwing it short in the middle of the field when you have 50 seconds left in the game. It doesn't make any sense to me. That feels something like more a rookie does because they drill into his head, got to get rid of the football, But you gotta push the ball downfield in this situation.
You do just need a field goal though, so that would have been a first down. You reset the chains,
guess.
and then.
Yeah, I guess. But the first one was more troublesome to me to throw literally a 1 or 2 yard drag route in the middle of the field to get 3 yards. Like there's no upside in that play.
Yeah. All right. Game comes down to this. I feel like that was a good ball as well.
Pick six.
It was a little outside, but I feel like you could have give it a chance to get that ball there on the outbreak route. I'm not hating that throw. Probably one of his less good ones of the day. 5 wide. Here we go. All right. Well, that's a way to end it. Oh, well, you're muted.
Yeah, something on your mic went dead.
I understand what happened. Okay, let's see.
There you go. You're there. You're back.
Yeah, back. Yeah, the that felt like a bit of nervous throw on fourth down. I feel like you got to be. That's a throw you can make on first down. I feel like when the game's on the line on fourth down, you got to be pretty sure you got to play, don't you? But we're not learning lessons. We're learning stuff about the quarterback, but that harkens back to more like what I might have expected to see from Drew Aller. And it's a tough review I'm giving him. I agree with you. I think he made some good throws, as he did in previous weeks. So it's not like he's looked terrible or anything. I would never say that about his preseason. There's stuff to work with, and it actually turned into something. I'm definitely rostering him, and I'm going to see what he looks like later in the year and in the future. But it's not. I haven't seen anything yet from him that makes me feel like they shouldn't draft a quarterback next year. Let's put it that way. That's really the bottom line.
So we are going to bounce out of here like 3 hours into a live feed. This is a lot of fun, and I remember doing day 3 of the NFL draft where I think I was on air for like 8 straight hours.
Yep.
So this feels a lot shorter, but you can catch Will. He's at SteelerFury, and when draft season rolls around, Owen and I will definitely have Will back on. There's a lot of stuff that Will does with draft a team, and he runs some mock drafts off of his SteelerFury site that usually several of us are very involved with. So,
Indeed.
So for Will, Owen, myself, everybody at Overreaction Buffalo, everybody at FanDuel, everybody at the Anchor Bar, thank you very much for watching. Owen and I will see you on a podcast next Thursday, 7 p.m. MAFIA BPA. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks for having me. See you guys.